The Monster of Gotham. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, Thunder and Steel. Supergirl looked at the short figure in disbelief. Robin? Robin with a strange smile just pulled the corners of his mouth and laughed wildly. Haha. Robin might have been waiting for them here a few days ago. Help me. Laughing, Robin was stunned. Then he grinned. I feel much better now. Supergirl might have had the same doubts as Lizu, but because of her confidence in her strength, she was obviously not worried about the plan of the Laughing Bat against her. She had just come to Earth not long ago, and her powerful strength made her believe that the scheme was just an accessory. That's the effect of the drug of the Laughing Bat. Judging from your age, you are Damian, right? The eye mask and the smiley face occupied his entire face, and no one could recognize his true appearance. Damian? Laughing, Robin's mouth grinned even wider. Who is that? Supergirl. Lizu shouted. Something is wrong. My name is Shazam. As Laughing Robin said the name, a crack, a divine thunder flashed across the sky over the ice cave of the base above his head. Lightning penetrated from the sky and swept towards Lizu, who had turned into a big doll. Lizu's speed in this state was obviously much faster, and with a warning in his heart, he jumped before that and dodged just in time. Ah! Supergirl was facing away from the lightning and was hit. The electricity passed through her back and condensed from the S logo on her chest, like a roaring lightning snake, drilling into the body of Laughing Robin. All this happened too fast. The thunder only rumbled in my ears after that. Bang! Accompanied by thunder, Supergirl spun and flew towards Lizu, hitting him at his feet. The toy puppet with plastic buttons looked at the place where the lightning finally gathered. The short figure had disappeared, leaving only a 190-meter tall strong man with a lightning logo on his chest. He also smiled, a crazy smile. Yes, if there is anyone in the world who can make Supergirl anxious now. Lizu looked at the majestic and burly figure. This was not the first time he had seen Shazam, but his terrifying strength was still frightening. No matter how perfect the plan was, it seemed powerless in the face of such a terrifying force. Shazam, who was transformed into his own subordinate by the Laughing Bat. Is this the maximum force you can punch? With her golden hair flying, Supergirl climbed up and stood in front of Lizu. She was a Kryptonian, and even so far she had only imitated Superman's behavior. She had no sense of belonging to this planet. The power that the angry Supergirl could exert was far beyond the compassionate Superman. Ha 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 ha. The laughing Shazam disappeared from Lizu's sight in an instant. The wind, driven by his running, swept towards Lizu and easily knocked Lizu away. Boom. Lizu was knocked away, and he was completely unable to react quickly. Supergirl was pinched by the neck and flew upwards. The huge force broke the ice layer like a reverse pit digging machine, tearing through the darkness and obstacles, and finally appeared under the sky. Shazam didn't take Lizu seriously, and the same was true for Supergirl. The puppet looked up and looked at the two people fighting in the sky. In their eyes, the toy man was just a third-rate little character with some strange abilities. This boring feeling of irritability and insignificance is always with me. He held the wall and stood up. After turning into a puppet, his body seemed to have completely turned into a toy, and those bad physiological reactions would not appear on him for the time being. At that moment, it seemed that something was wrong, but the puppet was nothing special. Boom. The puppet stomped its feet on the ground, and its soft furry feet burst out with indescribable power. The reaction force pushed him into the sky, even though this power was weaker than Shazam, who had received the gift of God, and even weaker than the Kryptonians. Standing on the ice of the polar region, Lizu looked up at the sky. Since he embarked on the journey to find Superman, everything fell into the plan of the Laughing Bat, and it seemed that he was the key role in making all this happen. He was helping the Laughing Bat to accelerate the completion of his goal. Lizu turned his head and looked at the Fortress of Solitude behind him. If there was anything here that the Laughing Bat cared about. Clouds gathered above his head. Shazam's eyes were spraying lightning, and his left hand reached up to the sky. Crack. Lightning struck, but he caught it accurately in his palm. The twisted electricity was restless like a snake, but it couldn't break free from Shazam's palm. He threw lightning and pointed it directly at Supergirl. The lightning crossed countless distances in an instant and hit the towering S logo. This was not a one-time attack like a spear or gun condensed by lightning, but endless lightning. One end plunged into Supergirl's chest, and the other end connected to the thundercloud behind Shazam. Ah! Supergirl screamed when the lightning pierced her body. She had a body of steel, but the magic condensed lightning ignored this, causing her body to tremble uncontrollably. The clouds rolled, and a big smiling face seemed to condense above the sky. Supergirl was knocked away again, crashing into the ground and smashing a big hole. Ice slag was like rain and fog, sprinkling all over Lizu. The plush toy instantly changed from color matching to white fluff. The wind blew, sweeping past Lizu, blowing away the white fluff on his body. It was Shazam. Shazam flew over at an extremely fast speed, and even smiled at Lizu when he passed by him. Of course, it was so fast that even Batman could not detect this little movement. There was another muffled sound, and Supergirl, who was just about to get up, was stepped on the chest. The back of her head fell like a heavy hammer, and the pit pressed down a few meters. Ha 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 ha. Shazam laughed wildly, holding a batarang in his right hand, and stabbed it at Supergirl. A red light flashed. It was heat vision. Shazam was knocked away in an instant. This is your plan, Batarang. You plan to use this trick to infect me? Chapter 252 Best-selling toys. Supergirl floated up. Her face was cold, and she was angry. After being beaten several times in a row, she tilted her head slightly, and her heat vision hit the bat dart directly. The heat vision that could melt steel did not cause any changes to the special bat dart. This is a special bat dart. Want something exciting? Shazam opened his hands and raised them above his head, waiting for something. Above his head, thunderclouds rolled, and the lightning that overflowed from the clouds alone was no less than the lightning that hit Supergirl. This would be an unprecedented world-destroying attack, and even a body of steel could not withstand it. The after images of red and blue intertwined passed by, and Supergirl flew over. She punched it, and when she swung her fist, a white circle exploded in the air, and her fist pulled 3 white circles that were produced in succession and hit Shazam's grinning face. Shazam turned into a shadow that could not be captured by the naked eye, smashed through 2 icebergs, and finally with a tsunami-like boom sound, raised rolling ice, snow, and mud, occupying all sides. Supergirl adjusted her body shape and rushed forward again. It seems that the beating just now made her very angry. She wanted to swing her fist and smash as much as she could. The earth shook. There was no earthquake more terrible than this, but such a terrifying earthquake was just the aftermath of Shazam's face being hit by a fist. If this fist hit a person, no, it fell on a piece of iron, it would definitely crush the iron to the molecular level. There was a sound of breaking through the air, and Shazam was beaten and flew into the thundercloud. In the thunder, he seemed to have regained some confidence and waved his hands hard to smash down. In the competition with Supergirl, he noticed the gap in strength, so he could only use some magic to find balance. But at this time, Lizu retracted his gaze and turned around. The space was distorted like a dream. Pop, it seemed that someone poked the snot bubble of the dream god, and the space exploded. A little girl in a white dress appeared here. She turned her head and looked at the tall toy doll. So cute. The little girl had no resistance to such a huge toy dog. The button eyes were more attractive than Johnny Depp's eyes. She rubbed her head with the toy belly for a while before looking up and asking, "So you can turn yourself into a toy?" "I'm a toy person. Before I learn to turn other things into toys, I need to be careful not to turn myself into a toy. As long as I don't control myself, I will definitely become a toy." The furry toy hand held the girl's left hand. "Are you cold?" The little girl nodded vigorously, and her nose was red from the cold. "How is it done?" Lizu lowered his head and asked, while leading her to the Fortress of Solitude. When passing by the bat dart on the ground, he bent down and picked up the bat dart. The special kryptonite bat dart can easily cut the skin of Kryptonians, but it is difficult to cut the palm of the toy doll. The earth-shaking battle behind him set off waves of air, blowing the toy dog's fur to roll, and his tail swayed uncontrollably from side to side. The little girl Shirley turned her head curiously and looked back, unable to help but widen her eyes. She looked even more terrified than when she saw the nuclear bomb sweeping across Raccoon City. After all, the nuclear bomb exploded only for a moment, while the two people behind her were constantly exploding with power no less than that of the nuclear bomb. Lizu led Shirley into the Fortress of Solitude. "Can you have some hot milk? The child feels a little cold." The working robot quickly came over with a cup of hot milk. "Thank you." Shirley held the hot milk and squinted her big eyes. The warm milk made her feel very comfortable. She looked at the robot in front of her with great curiosity. Robots, that is something that only exists in science fiction movies, not to mention that the robot in front of her can serve hot milk. Soon, Shirley drank up the hot milk and licked the white circle on the edge of her mouth with her tongue. "Do you want to eat anything else? Can I?" Shirley asked happily. She began to feel that being adopted by this weird guy didn't seem so bad. Although they often went to bars and had drinks and dinners with a group of bad middle-aged people, at least this trip was good. There was hot milk, cute robots, and flying guys fighting. Except it was a bit cold here. Of course, Lizu looked up and said, "You're not such a stingy person, are you, laughing bat?" Ha 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 ha. The laughter sounded at the same time, and in front of a puppet and a little girl, a holographic projection lit up. It was the laughing bat, and he was holding a chess set. The projected laughing bat was 2 stories high, and it looked like Lizu was standing on his chessboard. As the laughing bat moved the chess pieces, Lizu could only stand on the chessboard passively. Checkmate. Gotham. Gotham after dark is much more lively than during the day. No city's night would make people happier and freer than the night without the bat lights. A black shadow crossed the night sky. The slender figure squatting on the rooftop stared at the bikers riding motorcycles below. She jumped down, her arms stretched out to the left and right, and the cape behind her unfolded and turned into a paraglider, dragging her straight towards the bikers. When she was about to reach the ground, she suddenly retracted her arms and kicked the biker riding a motorcycle in front of her away, turning the tables. "It's Batgirl. Kill her. She always likes to do bad things recently." The other bikers immediately pulled out knives, bats, and maces from the cars and chopped at Batgirl. The fierce attack came all at once, and Batgirl immediately let go of the handlebars, squatted on the motorcycle and jumped, dodging the swept weapons with a backward diving action, and then landed, still standing firmly on the car. She kicked the handlebars and opened the glider behind her neatly. The high-speed airflow dragged her up and landed slowly. The car in front of her tilted, and the surrounding bikers almost stood next to the car in order to get close to attack her, which caused the other cars to be knocked over when one car fell. There was a sudden wailing on the road. The sirens finally followed. Batgirl took 2 quick steps and blended into the darkness. "I can't waste too much time on these things. I don't know what happened to Kara." Thinking of Supergirl who suddenly left in a hurry on the road to Gotham, she couldn't help but worry. It had been 8.5 minutes since Kara left, but she had great confidence in Supergirl's power. No one on this planet could threaten her. Maybe she just encountered some trouble and had to delay. Penguin? Batgirl only then remembered that she had drunk with Penguin before she caught the toy man. They must have reached some kind of deal between them. Maybe we should find out before Kara comes back. She could hear what Penguin was saying to someone. The best-selling toy in the world. Chapter 253 Seeing Through Each Other. What does he want that thing for? Batgirl quickly caught up with Penguin. Gotham's winding roads made it easy for her to follow Penguin without worrying about being left behind. Soon, Batgirl followed Penguin into a factory. There was a strong smell of plastic. It was a toy factory, which usually produced handmade figures, a kind of high-end toy that Batgirl didn't quite understand. They were model toys, made very delicately, but people often hugged them and called them wives. Toy factory. Batgirl seemed to have sensed the key information. The sound of mechanical gears biting drove the machines to rotate layer by layer. The toy factory was rushing to work. Batgirl knew some of the factory's dirty tricks. The toys were hollow inside when they were produced. In fact, almost all toys were hollow inside, which would make the toys cheaper and lighter, and put some illegal things inside to facilitate delivery. But Batgirl didn't think that it was just delivery and would require Penguin to personally go to the factory to inquire. And there was also a rumor that Penguin had quit for a while. The Penguin who walked into the factory pinched his nose and complained, "I can't stand this damn weird smell. Where are the things?" Immediately, a man with eye bags staring at him walked over quickly. "Boss, it's ready." Could it be that the Penguin is also one of those people who likes to hug toys and call them wives? Before Batgirl had time to think about it, she saw two people carrying something out. Superman. She covered her mouth and almost shouted out. Superman was motionless. It was a toy. The life-size Superman toy was almost alive. The best-selling toy in the world. Batgirl finally came to her senses at this time. If there is a toy that sells the best on this planet, it must be Superman. He is bright, powerful, just, and full of hope. You can even use perfection on him. He wants to. There was movement behind her, and Batgirl turned around quickly and rolled to avoid it. The man came to quietly. She didn't notice it until the wind was almost touching her ear. She even suspected that if the other party hadn't intentionally let her know, the other party could have killed her in an instant. When she saw who had attacked her from behind, she was even more shocked. Batman. His whole body melted into the darkness, and he changed his stance so that he could blend into the darkness in a more perfect state. Or rather, he was the darkness. It wasn't the Batman who laughs, it was the original Batman. Batgirl thought of something, and she quickly looked down. Sure enough, the factory workers had brought out a new toy, Wonder Woman. She could guess that the person in front of her was also a toy. The best-selling toy in the world is not a single toy, but a set of toys. The Justice League is definitely the best-selling toy in the world. At this moment, Batgirl realized the power of the Toy Man. As long as he was given a toy, he could even revive the entire Justice League, and even if he picked up a globe, would it be? She immediately denied this. If he could really do it, all of the plans of the Batman who laughs would really be just a ridiculous joke. "I need your help," Batman said in a low voice. "Can you tell me what happened in this city now?" Batgirl nodded vigorously, looked at the factory that was moving out the Flash toys again, and followed Batman without saying much. The two of them went into the night and disappeared without a trace. In the Arctic, in the Fortress of Solitude, the projection of the laughing bat looked down at Lizu. He poked Lizu with his index finger and laughed wildly. "Haha, you are still qualified to sit on the chess table, but you are really slow. Do you really want me to tell you all the answers? That would be very boring. To be honest, you can turn yourself into a toy. It's beyond my expectation. You don't look as good as before." Lizu patted his furry puppet head. "This is my most ferocious look. It's unfortunate that you saw it. That naive and cute look can't be called ferocious at all." This time, the laughing bat didn't laugh and said, "Really?" There was a howling wind and lightning behind him. Supergirl and Shazam stood behind Lizu, one on the left and one on the right, and without exception, they all had smiles on their faces. They did not take action, but quietly waited for Lizu to speak. It is definitely not Batman's hobby to let an ignorant opponent explain the details of his plan, but it must be the Joker's hobby. Lizu shook his furry head and said, "It all happened too smoothly, starting from Supergirl bringing me to the North Pole." They listened quietly, knowing that he was explaining everything he knew. She is a Kryptonian. Perhaps out of confidence in her own strength, she is too lazy to question any conspiracy. So she followed your scheme to come to the Fortress of Solitude, wanting to knock down all your conspiracies with one punch. To be honest, if I had such a strong power, I would definitely do the same. Using your brain is a very troublesome thing. The furry head turned again, and the Q-version furry teeth sewn on his face did not move. He was just a plush toy, without any biological characteristics, and the voice just appeared in his body out of thin air. But she never explained to me what she saw, and why she had to come to the Fortress of Solitude. It's normal for Supergirl to look down on a third-rate bastard like me, but a first-rate bastard like you. The puppet pointed at the laughing bat with his paw. "You will definitely not miss me in the plan. You know I have several ways to stop Supergirl from taking me to the North Pole. of course. Anyway, I did not resist and came to the North Pole and entered the Fortress of Solitude. At this time, I didn't have anything to doubt. Even when I saw Shazam and the two of them fighting, I didn't notice anything until you couldn't help but use that thing to remind me. The smile on the laughing bat's face disappeared. It was not a smile because his plan was exposed, but because his opponent was too weak and he was not interested in laughing. Or maybe he had laughed enough. I guess it was the Batarang that turned Shazam into that look. If you want to infect someone, why do you have to use the Batarang? Can you infect Supergirl from the beginning? After getting the answer, reverse reasoning became a little easier for me. Why did Supergirl follow all your plans so smoothly? From taking me to the Fortress of Solitude, to meeting Shazam, and even fighting. Although this is thrilling for others, and I admire your strategy, in my opinion, it's all too smooth. There is only one explanation. She was infected when she first encountered the headless corpse, so what follows is acting. What situation can make the story go on so smoothly? No matter how perfect the plan is, there is no guarantee that there will be no mistakes. The answer is that the two hostile parties are actors and they know the script. The plush toy dog patted its belly, and its cute appearance made Shirley's eyes shine. Let me make a more arrogant guess. That Jonathan Kent might be real. Your initial target was not Supergirl, but me. It was only because I was too scared to fall for it that you changed your target. Ha 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 ha. I really can't help but want to pay more attention to you. The projection of the laughing bat laughed loudly, but you only told half of it, didn't you? The laughter of the laughing bat sounded dry and weak, like a laugh from hell. You thought about the follow-up when you came into contact with Jonathan Kent. Whether you stayed in the police station, or were captured and brought to the Fortress of Solitude, or the explanation just now, it was just because you were waiting for something and delaying time. The laughing bat seemed to have seen through it long ago, but with Shazam and Supergirl in hand, the most useful cards in the world were already in his hand. Oh, I've been discovered. The naive toy dog shook his head, as if a little embarrassed. The toy puppet suddenly raised his head and clenched his fists. So now we just have to see who has prepared the strongest trump card. Chapter 254 Zombie Superman. The 200-meter long stuffed puppet took a lunge. The clumsy and cute movements could not hide the strong murderous aura. It seemed that, if the button eyes were staring at him, his life would be in danger. As his body retreated, Lizu's puppet fist pulled and swung back vigorously. A sizzling sound could be heard, and a needle and thread seemed to be about to break free. His target was Shazam. After being pulled to the limit, the powerful and seemingly weak punch suddenly smashed out and hit Shazam's face, which was as motionless as a wooden pillar. Shazam's face was still smiling. Being hit by a toy. Oh, that's too bad. Maybe he will sneeze because of the fur allergy. It's really terrible. Ordinary people would not dodge a punch from a stuffed puppet, not to mention that he is a superhero. Shazam grinned and watched the puppet's fist hit his face. Boom. The fist hit his face, and the huge furry claws covered Shazam's entire face at the moment the two collided. Supergirl, who had been watching with a smile on her face, suddenly changed her expression. She noticed the change in the airflow in the surrounding space. It was the change caused by the huge force swinging rapidly and breaking the stable space. Boom. Shazam flew backwards, like a javelin thrown from a high place, with his head as the tip of the spear, piercing the wall fiercely, crossing a distance of 20 meters in an instant, and his head pierced into the wall. Whoosh, the storm came, and Supergirl's eyelids twitched slightly. The puppet that had just beaten Shazam flew in front of her again. It was still a powerful punch. No one dared to underestimate this toy dog now. Supergirl raised her fist to meet the fist. Facing the fist of the Kryptonian, the toy dog was beaten away without any surprise. The body stuffed with cotton hit the wall and fell to the ground. It bounced a few more times before it was completely smashed to the ground and motionless. The frivolous laughter of the laughing bat came. If this is the only way, you have no chance to play chess with me on an equal footing, ha 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 ha. The toy puppet burst out with superpower, which seemed to be beyond the guess of the laughing bat. The blood vessels in the corners of Supergirl's eyes were filled with blood. It seemed that there was hot magma surging in her blood vessels. Soon, the hot energy surged into her eye sockets. Heat vision. Two red energies shot towards Lizu, and the air had already been distorted by the heat. The red energy did not swallow Lizu. The puppet held a bat dart in his hand, which blocked the heat vision. The laughing bat completely lost interest in Lizu, who was exhausted from dealing with it. He looked at Shirley. "Hey little princess, can you tell me your name?" The ugly smile could make the little girl scream and cry. But that was definitely not Shirley. Her mental acceptance was much stronger than some superheroes. Shirley Birkin. Shirley looked up at him. The laughing bat propped his chin with his index finger and nodded. "What a nice name. Do you like laugh?" On the other side, when Lizu was struggling to block the heat vision with the bat dart, bang, Shazam punched him away, and the bat dart fell to the ground. Oh, now he's in trouble. The laughing bat finally moved his eyes, and it was obvious that his attention was no longer here. Lizu's performance disappointed him. The next moment, the laughing bat's smile deepened. "Haha, you are amazing." Two thick and powerful red energy rays flew out and hit Shazam, who was laughing wildly at that moment. Burning, that's right. Shazam's battle suit was damaged, and his strong muscles suddenly emitted a pungent smell of burning. It was the heat vision, which was far more powerful than Supergirl's heat vision, pushing Shazam to fly out again. Supergirl, who thought this battle was a sure thing, was stunned. The familiar and violent heat vision made her feel a little bad. A strong sonic boom swept through the whole of the Fortress of Solitude. Countless crystals shattered, and the strong wind swept across. Shirley was swept into the sky by the wind. Just as she exclaimed, a pair of furry arms hugged her. Supergirl was not so lucky. She was punched in the face. A solid punch. His head smashed into the ground like a head over heels, with only his feet above the ankles sticking out of the ground. Superman? Shazam stood up with the wounds on his body. Since he gained the power of Shazam, he hadn't been injured like this for a long time, and he couldn't resist. Although his face was still smiling, that smile was just a symptom of the virus remaining on the surface of his body, and it was definitely not happiness. No. He saw who that person was, and he was shaking. The torn blue battlesuit, the scarlet cape, and the S logo on the chest that was broken and exposed the gray skin, the most powerful superhero in the world, Superman. Shazam's words instantly attracted the attention of the figure that looked like Superman. The big hand reached out at a speed that he could detect but couldn't stop, and the irresistible force pinched Shazam's neck and pressed down hard. Boom. At that moment, it seemed as if the entire crust of the earth was shaking. Shazam was pressed into the ground without any resistance. Appeared in an instant, overpowering the two laughing heroes. Supergirl had pulled herself out of the pit and cleared the way with heat vision, rushing towards Superman. However, what greeted her was a larger and more terrifying heat vision. In comparison, Supergirl's heat vision was only as thick as a little finger, while Superman's heat vision was as thick as a wrist, and it was the wrist of a muscular bodybuilder. Superman rushed to Supergirl, bleeding, without eyeballs, and only the burnt bloody holes were left staring at Supergirl's smiling face. That luck made Supergirl tremble in her heart. Uppercut. Supergirl flew backwards. She couldn't control her body and drilled into the Arctic sky. White clouds passed by her side at a high speed. She tried her best to adjust her body, but her eyes suddenly darkened. It was Superman. His face was a little ulcerated, but there was flesh surging in the empty eyes, repairing the injuries at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Carl, this is not the real you, right?" Supergirl still had a smile on her face. She was greeted by another punch. Supergirl, whose speed was just about to slow down, was beaten away again, exceeding the speed of sound. No, this is not over yet. Superman caught up again and punched her. Catch up again, and punched again. The two almost broke through the atmosphere. Supergirl had almost no power to fight back in this attack. In the blink of an eye, they broke through the atmosphere. However, Superman froze at that moment. Looking at Superman's body, Supergirl suddenly laughed. She suddenly realized and said, "You are only skull in your bones. Your brain and muscle cells are all other things. Although you are full of vitality, you are still an Earth creature. The characteristics of Earth creatures are destined to be unable to survive in the vacuum of the universe." Superman's gray-skinned surface instantly froze. "Here, wait for the life in your body to pass away, Carl. I will come to recycle your bones." Supergirl rubbed the side of her face and rushed to the North Pole. Chapter 255 Hero Booth. In the Fortress of Solitude, inside the huge and beautiful crystal castle, Lizu held Shirley in his arms, ignored the projection of the laughing bat, passed through him, and came to Shazam, who had smashed into the ground. He put Shirley on the ground and squatted in front of Shazam, watching Shazam press his hands on the ground and pull his head out of the ground. Lizu held a rope in his hand, emitting light. The lasso of truth. Shazam knew this thing. I was tied up by this thing before. It is said that after being tied up, I will answer questions obediently. Lizu threw it towards Shazam fiercely, but Shazam dodged quickly and was not tied up. Shazam obviously also thought of the possibility of this thing against him. Although, the things in the hands of the Toyman may not be real. On the projection, the laughing bat smiled again. You really surprised me, the injured Shazam and the toy puppet Lizu with good combat power. Even if there is a high possibility of victory, that would not be the way of the laughing bat. He doesn't need to fight desperately to win. What he wants is to win without any accidents, even if the chip for winning is his life. Risking one's life and having a 70% chance is completely different from winning, as long as one uses this life. One is that there is a high probability of winning without dying, and the other is that one will die, but will definitely win. I'm glad to see your work. The projection of the laughing bat smiled and disappeared. Shazam looked at Lizu warily and flew away decisively. In the Fortress of Solitude, I almost died. The toy puppet fell to the ground, and the puppet's body shrank rapidly, and then it became a normal Lizu. The laughing bat himself did not take action. This action made Lizu fight with all his strength, and only a tie was fought. If Shazam really forced him to come, he was not sure whether the toy rope in his hand would work. What's going on? Lizu asked Shirley, who was walking over. He was asking Zombie Superman. If you let him chase him, he may not be able to come back if he chases him outside the atmosphere now. The parents of the little girl Shirley Birkin are both scientific researchers. As a result, although she is still a child, she has a lot of knowledge. Then let him stay there. Without the help of a Superman, Lizu seemed to be fine. Shirley said, it is only 5% assimilated. I dismantled 3 tyrants and used another G, but his genes are too strong. The reaction force generated by the battle just now is enough to kill 3 tyrants. G must stimulate the evolution of the tyrant cells on the surface of the body to adapt to the vacuum state. Otherwise we can only go outside the atmosphere to bring him back. Lizu thought, Kryptonians will become stronger when they bask in the sun. If G can absorb excellent genes to evolve and bask in the sun more, maybe he can evolve into something different. Based on Superman's skeleton, the flesh and blood of the tyrant were dismantled and fused, and a Kryptonian was barely assembled. Although the muscles of the tyrant are strong, they are still too weak for Kryptonians. G barely activated the energy in the Kryptonian gene and fired heat vision, but the heat vision burned through his eye muscles and organs when it condensed. The power of the explosion was enough to defeat Supergirl and Shazam. However, this method is not suitable for a protracted war. If Zombie Superman swings his fists a few more times, the tyrant muscles wrapped around the skeleton may collapse. Let him bask in the sun for a while. It won't be very useful if he comes back. It's better to stay in the sky to scare people. He stood up and patted his butt. We have to go back quickly. It will be a waste of time to rush back from the North Pole at our speed. Gotham, the Dark Knight, sullenly pressing on people's heads. The city has become bad. Although Gotham has always been one of the worst cities in the world, now everyone knows that the city has become worse and there is no possibility of being saved again. Because the Dark Knight of this city has passed away, and a brand new monster has grown on the corpse of the Dark Knight. In the Penguin's bar, Lizu and Penguin sat in the same position as before, but Lizu looked a little tired and dusty. A lot of things happened during the few days you were away, Penguin said, and gave Shirley, who was sitting next to Lizu, a friendly smile. Although the smile was friendly, it was definitely scary. If it were an ordinary 10-year-old girl, she might have screamed and cried. Shirley was certainly not ordinary. Not only was she a perfect G-fusion, she also played with G-creations and T-weapons in the dream world all day long. I have some understanding. Lizu nodded, indicating that he knew about the recent major events. The laughing bat suddenly announced to the world that he was ready to destroy the world, and it would be centered on Gotham. Lizu took the tablet handed over by Penguin and casually swiped the photos on it. Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Martian Manhunter, Aquaman. Which Flash is this? Green Lantern. These photos are all the corpses of superheroes. That's right. In this world, after Batman was infected with the virus and found something wrong with him, the first thing he did was to kill all the companions who were a threat to him. He is just displaying these corpses now. They are exhibiting in Washington. Everyone can visit the exhibition. There are not only superheroes, but also some very capable bastards. The ones who can survive now are all small characters. The Penguin rubbed his bald head, glanced around quietly, and then moved closer to Lizu and whispered, "I have almost prepared the things you asked for before. Are you really sure?" "Don't worry, my friend." Lizu patted the Penguin on the shoulder, stood up and said, to the laughing bat, "We are just small characters." He pinched the tip of his little finger and gestured, "Small character. There are still many people in this world that he needs to deal with, so he needs to focus on other places." He looked up, and his sight seemed to see through the sky, spanning countless light years. After a while, Lizu retracted his gaze, looked at the puzzled Penguin, and smiled. "But the little people have to fight hard, right? Let's go and see what you prepared." Led by the Penguin, they came to a dark and narrow warehouse with flashlights. As soon as they approached the damp warehouse, they smelled a pungent and moldy smell. "Open the hatch." Snap, snap, snap. The lights came on, illuminating the things placed in the center of the warehouse. Lizu's eyes lit up. Those were Justice League toys. They were posing in different shapes and standing on a makeshift exhibition stand. "Perfect work," Lizu praised generously. "Those really died at the hands of the laughing bat. You think these are fake?" Penguin doubted. He was very unconfident. No matter how exquisite these toys that cost a lot of money to make are, they are just toys. "No, they are real." Lizu walked to the exhibition stand and touched it lightly with his fingers. Superman moved. He put his hands on his waist and floated in the air, his red cape moving without wind. His resolute eyes swept over the Penguin, even making the Penguin sweat uncontrollably. "For truth and justice, this is Superman's job." Penguin looked at Superman, and Superman also looked at him. Penguin hesitated and said, "Lee, why is Superman a little? Read the script." Lizu scratched his head a little embarrassedly. "Sorry, I haven't turned Superman into a toy after all, so I can only give Superman's details myself. You should be glad that I have read enough comics." As he said that, Lizu's hand touched Wonder Woman again. She jumped down from the booth and shouted like Superman, "Give me strength, Penguin." "Thank you, Buhoyasi, for the reward." Chapter 256, Underground Atoms. The superheroes of the Justice League revived one by one in front of the Penguin. They got rid of their plastic bodies and reappeared with new life. They were not ordinary toys. The Penguin could feel the powerful aura emanating from each superhero. Even more powerful than the dead superheroes he had seen. So powerful that the already short Penguin was about to fall to the ground. Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg. Lizu counted them one by one, and the superheroes each waited quietly with a confident smile like the promotional photos on the poster. "There is still one missing," Lizu suddenly said. Hearing this, the Penguin immediately raised his hand to wipe the sweat. Before this, even though he had to cooperate with Lizu because of the laughing bat, he still thought that he was the strong party, taking the initiative in the negotiations and controlling everything. Mr. Oswald was a well-known bastard in this city for a long time. As for the toy man, he was just a third-rate character. If it weren't for the big ticket he made with the Joker that Christmas, he wouldn't even be considered third-rate now. This city is even more cruel to unknown villains. But now, looking at the other party's horrible means, Mr. Colbert was really scared. He even thought about whether there would be a Penguin with a villain standard smirk standing here instead of him, bossing around if he had not agreed to the other party's cooperation request. The Lizu in front of him reminded the Penguin of too many villains who appeared in this city with a blockbuster, especially the purple-clothed bastard who left a big joke to the world before his death. That guy liked purple clothes and dyed green hair. The guy in front of him wore green clothes. No, the more I look at him, the more similar he is, and the more I look at him, the more scared I am. The Penguin explained. Batman, there was a little accident with the mold when we were making it, so you're back late. A hoarse and low voice came from behind. The Penguin's men quickly raised the muzzle of the gun and aimed it at the person who walked in from the door. The Penguin also turned around slowly and stiffly. In addition to the habit of walking through the door, the voice, appearance, and the disgusting smell of bats made the Penguin extremely sure. It's Batman. The one who suddenly appeared here is Batman. Cobert, you'd better let your men put down their guns. This is advice. Batman's eyes under the mask stared at Penguin. Penguin raised his hand and slowly pressed it down, signaling his men to put down their guns. This nasty smell is really you, Batman. Lee, your ability is really perfect. After solving this matter, can you give him to me? He turned his head and looked at Lee Zhu. He is Batman. He won't listen to me. Lee Zhu spread his hands and shrugged, indicating that he was powerless, and then said to Batman, sorry, the other you is too difficult to deal with. I almost died. I gathered you together to let you help me. The smiling Superman slowly floated over. After Batman arrived, he seemed to be more lively. After the two world-class partners appeared, their souls seemed to be more lively. Superman said, that's right, we have to act quickly. We can't let the other you go on making trouble. This sentence Superman said to Batman. No matter what time, Superman is a well-deserved leader. Batman looked past Superman and looked at Lee Zhu. We should act now. How are you preparing? Almost there. How is your investigation going? Batman felt the inquiring gazes of his fellow Justice League members and said, all the surviving superheroes were infected with the laughing virus by the Batman who laughs. They built a base, and some superheroes who have not been infected were locked up in the base dungeon. Supergirl can't resist the virus. How can someone not be infected? Lee Zhu was surprised. Superman frowned at the side, listening to the bad news about Kara, but he didn't interrupt. It's Captain Atom. Batman said, but another possibility cannot be ruled out. Another possibility everyone present could think of is not that the Batman who laughs can't infect and transform Captain Atom, but that he deliberately did it. I won't just make one-handed preparations, and the Joker will do the same, Batman said, and his words undoubtedly confirmed that the reason why Captain Atom was not infected and transformed was that the Batman who laughs deliberately did it. How many bastards are still alive? Lee Zhu asked again. Batman said, I don't want to activate them. We need active forces. They have received the notice, but they may not come. Even if they really come, they will have to wait for a long time. Batman paused, then continued, I don't think they can play a role. Lee Zhu grinned, I think so too. Then, can you tell me how many hateful superheroes have defected to the enemy camp? Hearing Lee Zhu's words, the Penguin smiled comfortably. This is the first time that he can hear villains insult superheroes, and he is standing on the moral high ground of heroes. The only pity is that these superheroes are toys, which inexplicably makes him feel less comfortable. The laughing Atom was running rampant in his body. Although both of them have Atom in their titles, they have nothing to do with each other. Captain Atom has a terrifying energy like a nuclear bomb in his body. The Atom is most praised for his ability to shrink. Batman's guess was correct. The laughing bat had no intention of infecting Captain Atom from the beginning. He only needed to shrink the Atom and run wildly in his body to destroy it, and then, an out-of-control human-shaped nuclear bomb. That would be a good show to watch. Captain Atom struggled to hold on. He didn't mind self-detonating to kill the madman who was laughing outside, but he also knew that after his explosion, this city, the former City of Hope, would no longer have life. Just a few seconds ago, Captain Atom opened his eyes and his metal skin trembled. That is, a nation man in a green suit with dark bags under his eyes. He seemed to have not been able to sleep well for a long time. The smile on his lips disgusted Captain Atom. Another infected madman. Captain Atom made such a judgment and closed his eyes again. Hey, so indifferent? Hearing the other party talking, Captain Atom opened his eyes again. You are not them? He could tell that the other party was just a jerk with an annoying smile. I want to ask you for a favor. Help me drive them out. He pointed to the top of his head. Captain Atom did not reject the proposal immediately, but asked, Who's a you? No one's. I like to work alone, thank you. Void watching for the reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 Batcave. Lizu looked at Captain Atom, who was suspended in the iron cage, and could barely open his eyes to look at himself. Do you need me to help you catch the fleas in your body? Captain Atom ignored Lizu's jokes. A blue light appeared on his body, and there was a shout in his body. Ha ha ha, you finally can't help it. It was the little flea Atom in his body. It seems that, after running for so long, Atom is also tired. Batman has become a madman, and so are those people. They are all infected. If you have some tricks to easily walk back and forth, I hope you can pass on a message for me. The reason why Captain Atom suddenly exploded, making the energy uncontrollable and even having the possibility of self-explosion, was to trap Atom in his body, so that he could not escape and pass on the message. The result of doing so is also obvious. He will no longer be able to fully control the energy in his body. Don't. Patriotic youth. Lizu interrupted him. Don't let me deliver the message. I'm not a patriot, and look at my skin color. You must know that I definitely don't love the country on this land under my feet, let alone those fat-bellied rulers. His words did not exceed the expectations of the Atom. There are countless disasters in the world, superhumans, and even alien invasion forces, but humans are still constantly fighting civil strife. Captain Atom said quietly the conclusion he had already reached. This is the common answer of all superhumans, so they just waved their fists at each other and never participated in any national or international battles. This is a default code of conduct. That madman turned everyone into a laughing state, and everyone obeyed him. He didn't turn me into one of them, so I knew that he needed me to do something else. Captain Atom was very calm. This period of prison life made him think a lot of things. That's right, the laughing bat needs a nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapons, that is the identity card of the top forces, but the laughing bat will never be so superficial. Lizu is more willing to believe that the laughing bat just wants Captain Atom to self-destruct, because that will achieve a certain link. Then, a certain crazy plan will be successful. He needs a huge amount of energy. I don't know what he is going to do, but he needs a living energy source. Lizu pondered. What an unexpected gain. Captain Atom asked, so you are still going to let me self-destruct and help you blow away the people above? They are not important to that crazy bat. As long as all my energy is stimulated, his goal will be achieved. There was a moment of hesitation. Lizu nodded. But for me, it is also important to drive them out. This world is hopeless. Captain Atom closed his eyes. 10 minutes. I can only say to hold on for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, this city may disappear completely. Although I hate Superman, I admit that the former metropolis is also the city of hope in my heart. Actually, I think the atmosphere in Gotham is good. Lizu shrugged and replied. Then you must be from Gotham. Ha 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 ha. Captain Atom laughed, closed his eyes, and finally snored. The energy on his body surface could no longer be suppressed. Looking at the sleeping Captain Atom, Lizu raised his hand. In his hand was a forelimb, which was constantly emitting spores and blending into the air. He still remembered what Batman said. If possible, rescue Captain Atom. No matter why the laughing bat imprisoned Captain Atom, as long as Captain Atom was in his hand, he would get more chips. But Lizu didn't want to follow anyone's orders. The next moment, Lizu shrank instantly, turned into a toy puppet, and fell to the ground. In the sky far away from Metropolis, Lizu sat on the Green Goblin aircraft, pinching the stopwatch. In the distance, a bright spot suddenly lit up, and at that moment everything in the surrounding space dimmed, and even the sun above his head became less dazzling at that moment. The bright spot expanded rapidly in an instant, and the light swept across the entire city. The strange thing is that after the flash of light, the speed of destruction is not fast, which allows enough people to easily escape from Metropolis. One after another, all of them are superheroes who have been infected and transformed. He is so punctual. Lizu looked down at his wrist, and there was no watch on his wrist. A somewhat dry voice came from behind him. You used that thing. Hawkgirl, who came from the Flashpoint world with Lizu and Harley Quinn, was a loyal supporter of Queen Diana in that world and dedicated everything to the War of Women. Although, after being captured by Lizu, she was infected by the blood of madness, and from then on she could only laugh crazily, and she also followed her heart's wishes and wanted to kill Lizu. But that was at least the beginning of their cooperation. Until they met the evil god Dagon, everything changed. The indescribable seed hidden in Lizu's body gave Hawkgirl's madness an object to rely on, but she almost died in the battle of the Marvel world. Her wings were torn off, and she became a broken toy. At this time, Hawkgirl was still flying, flapping her wings, making her go up and down in the air, like a big bird. But this wing, one side is an eagle wing, and the other side is just a broken and simple flesh wing with bone spurs and red flesh. The virus gave her a lot of things, wings are just one of them, and her rationality seems to have returned a lot. Although, it is always more than when she was dominated by madness. That's the enemy's base camp. How can I go alone? Anyway, it's just a dream for Captain Atom, and I don't have to risk my life to deliver something. Lizu put his hands on the pergola, and a group of black dots approached rapidly in the distance, and continued, I'm really afraid of death. At the same time, in Gotham, a man in a windbreaker walked with his head down. In front of him was Wayne Manor, one of the most famous manors in the city, the home of Playboy Bruce Wayne. When it comes to Bruce Wayne, what can you think of first? Playboy? Spend money like water? Or handsome and rich? This seems to be a kind of adjective. But apart from these, besides the fact that there is always an old housekeeper beside him and no maids, the most impressive thing should be Bruce Wayne's Wayne Manor, and this ancient manor, that is like the worst city. There are countless secrets hidden in it. Even if Bruce Wayne takes female models to do something interesting, it will be in a hotel outside. He rarely takes other people to the manor. This deepens the sense of mystery. Many people want to visit this ancient building, but they are all turned away. When James Gordon was still alive, many people were jailed for trespassing into the Playboy's manor. There are many policemen who want to curry favor with Bruce Wayne, so these guys who violated Mr. Wayne's privacy privately received special treatment. Gordon, the man in the windbreaker, looked at the manor in front of him. The familiar manor was in the dark. It seemed that there was a huge claw, always on the roof of the highest building in the manor. He quickly stepped into the shadow of the tree nearby. After a while, a shadow jumped out from the shadow. But if someone accidentally saw it and rubbed his eyes hard, looking at the shaking branches, would he still doubt that something really jumped out just now? The person who came was Batman. While Lizu was completing his plan and luring out the superheroes squatting together in Metropolis, he had to return to Wayne Manor, or to be more precise, to the Batcave. There were all of Batman's secrets. Now Batman needed to find some answers in it, and a chance to win this battle. Chapter 258 The Corpse in the Batcave. Batman opened his cape, and the wind fluttered slightly, flowing out from under the cape. The wind dragged him, buffering the speed of his descent. He landed, rolled forward to relieve himself, and leaned his back against the wall. In the castle-like manor, dominated by darkness, Batman's cape was like the protective color of a chameleon, allowing him to blend in effortless. I still remember that tree. He landed in the shadow of the fountain in the center of the yard, looking at a tree standing alone in the distance. The leaves were scattered on the branches, but they were full of bleakness. That was the tree that our family planted together before everything started to get worse. He was in a trance, as if he saw a happy scene in the past, and recalled the time. Father Thomas rolled up his shirt to his hands, leaned on the shovel, and pointed at his funny son and laughed. Young Bruce had dirt on his nose. He had just fallen, and his little face became dirty, but he was also laughing. Young Bruce rubbed his nose covered with plaster, and stared at the tree that he had planted with tears in his eyes. He looked forward to the future of the tree he had planted, hoping that it would accompany him forever. His mother Martha laughed and scolded the Wayne father and son for making a mess of their clothes, but she felt warm about everything in front of her. Butler Alfred stood by with a smile. He had already prepared warm water and towels, and he would come forward as soon as everything was over and deliver the items needed by the host family. At this time, the only thing hanging on the tree was a vague memory for Batman. The wind blew, and 2 leaves fell, waking him up. Batman shook his head hard to throw those memories out of his mind. He moved again, looking at the manor. That was a little strange and a little familiar. Some places will not change. He came to a cave. This was the first time Bruce Wayne fell into the entrance of the Batcave when he was young, but he never walked through this entrance again after he became Batman and turned the cave into his secret base. Batman jumped into the cave in trance. Along the way, spider webs kept blocking his way. The feeling of sticking to his body was very bad. At the moment, when he was about to hit the ground, the Batcave opened, and the wind dragged Batman to the ground lightly, and the only sound in the air was whoosh, the sound of the cloth shaking lightly. Even the bats hanging upside down in the cave were not awakened. The next thing was simple. Batman returned to the Batcave, and no one could stop him. Even after returning to the Batcave, Batman did not reveal his figure without permission, but treated this place as the most secure warehouse in the world. He did not dare to take it lightly. When he acted cautiously, he did not forget to look around. The decoration has not changed much. He knows that he can't do better. It can be seen that he is slightly satisfied that the laughing bat did not change his decoration without permission. That is, Batman cast his eyes on the monitor of the Batcave, which was enough to cover an entire wall. A satellite belonging to Bruce Wayne was slowly moving above the low Earth orbit. Although Batman did not have Superman's super hearing and supervision, this satellite could do all of this. The satellite did not need to monitor any screen. It was a central tower that could hack into all places in the world at any time, except for a few special locations with strict national confidentiality levels. Keeping Gotham City under surveillance was just a side function. The map projected by the satellite had a circular blank area. Metropolis. The whole city was now blank. He really couldn't cooperate so well, so cooperating with villains was a wrong choice. Batman looked deeper into the Batcave. Batman seemed to have foreseen this outcome. He could still remain calm while looking at the destroyed Metropolis. Perhaps because he had already investigated clearly that after Metropolis became the base of the Laughing Man, ordinary citizens had already been dismissed. In the Batcave were parked the Batmobile, the Batflyer, and even those replacement suits, but nothing mattered. When he was Batman, some very important things would be placed deep inside, and more useful things would only be placed deeper. And now, Batman can be sure that the Laughing Bat is not here. Batman jumped into the water, and the water submerged up to his thighs. The water was icy cold, but it felt very familiar. Batman turned on the night vision ability of the hood, and waded deeper into the Batcave. After passing through an obvious door, there was a piece of land. Batman jumped up, half crouched on the ground, and looked around vigilantly. I thought he would turn this place into a prison, but I didn't expect. His vanity is heavier than mine. The space here is not small, and there are upside down glass jars stacked. At the door, there is a pesticide bottle upside down in the glass jar, and there is a skull with a cross on it. That is the fear gas of the Scarecrow, and Batman has suffered from it before. In the glass jar next to it is a pistol. Batman remembered that it was the gun that the Joker held when he kidnapped the people on the 2 ships. That fight almost cost Batman his life, and it was also the time when the Joker made him hate him the most, so he did not hand over the pistol to the evidence room of the Gotham Police Department, but kept it in the Batcave to remind himself at all times. Crocodile Man's broken teeth, Poison Ivy's plant piranha specimens, Mad Hatter's hat, one after another collection is the spoils of the battles he won. It also records the dangers and stories he has experienced along the way. And at the deepest point, Batman's eyes jumped. Mother Box. This thing is related to a more terrifying existence. It can be seen that the existence is not ready to attack the Earth. Batman retracted his gaze from the Mother Box and continued to walk deeper into the cave. He smelled a bad smell in the water, the stench of a rotten corpse. His feet stepped into the water again, breaking the calmness of the water surface. He could vaguely see something floating on the water. It was a corpse. Lying on the water, it swayed slowly with the ripples caused by Batman stepping into the water. Batman quickly walked over and grabbed the body. The moment he saw the clothes on the other person clearly, a familiar feeling came over him. Even Batman couldn't help but feel his heart beating wildly. He quickly dragged the body to the nearest platform. At this time, he didn't care whether he would be exposed and turned on the small light he carried with him. The dark space finally welcomed sunlight. The full picture of the body also came into view. Although the body had been soaked for a long time and became bloated, Batman could still recognize the other person's identity from the swollen face. Yes, how could he not recognize it? This body is Bruce Wayne. It is himself! Exclamation mark. Chapter 259 Death. Metropolis. A huge shockwave swept across, and after the mushroom cloud was released, the clouds were cleared, and the sky was white. Lizu put his hands on the pergola, and watched those black spots fly quickly in front of him. Under deliberate control, these laughing people were given enough time to escape, and they also found Lizu, who had been waiting here for a long time. Firestorm burning with flames, Shazam riding thunder, Supergirl, Hawkman, Hawkgirl and others with dazzling red capes almost formed a wall. Boom, boom, boom. The ground was shaking wildly, and a woman as tall as a building was running towards this side. It was the giant woman, and she was carrying Green Arrow, Black Canary, Beast Boy and others. These extraordinary people who could not gather together at all on weekdays, gathered together at this time. Without exception, they all had smiles on their faces, creepy smiles. I might have been tricked by that bat. Lizu looked at the sea of superheroes in front of him, and rubbed his hair in distress. Maybe if I'm not careful today, I'll die here. He shook his head again. Just die here. Listening to his mumbling, his life and death were decided. If it were anyone else, they would definitely open their jaws in astonishment. The laughing men found him and surrounded him. Shazam took a step forward and looked at Lizu from a distance, his mouth almost pulled to his ears. You can't run away this time, even if that half-dead Superman comes back. Shazam has always been upset about not killing Lizu last time. He thinks that he is just a toy man of a third-rate character in Gotham. Apart from those fragile conspiracies and tricks, he is as fragile as an ant and can't withstand a slight pinch from his 2 fingers. It's just that the laughing bat is too cautious. But Shazam is not stupid. He knows the power of the opponent's fist after he turns into a toy puppet. Although it is not fatal, it hurts a lot. He wants a complete victory, right here. Under the control of magic, clouds appeared out of thin air and quickly gathered from all directions, and the whole sky quickly darkened. Shazam, who had been hit by the puppet's fist, wisely chose a more straightforward way to win this battle. Use magic to burn it directly into charcoal. Thunder flashed in the dark clouds. Thunder snakes rolled out, and the hammer in Hawkman's hand flying high seemed to have become a conductor of magic lightning. The net-like thunder snakes overflowed and wrapped around Hawkman. Hawkman quickly landed and hid beside the giant girl. What are you doing? They are no longer bright and righteous superheroes. A small conflict may lead to a war. Shazam grinned and said, if I accidentally kill someone when I attack, I'm really sorry. The others immediately distanced themselves from Shazam and the thundercloud that was almost pressing down on the ground. Only Firestorm and Supergirl were unmoved. Haha. Shazam laughed wildly, and the bust of the laughing bat condensed by the thundercloud swooped down like a gate of hell opened in the sky, pointing directly at Lizu. Lizu looked up at the thundercloud. As the lightning snake came towards him, he still had the leisure to tease. You must like him very much. He did not choose to transform into a stuffed toy, but rushed towards Firestorm, who was not close to him, looking like he was in a panic. After all, the only 2 people close to him at the scene were Supergirl and Firestorm. Firestorm might look less dangerous, but for an ant, is there any difference between being stepped on and falling into a brazier? Firestorm immediately reacted. He pushed his hands forward, and the flames expanded from his palms, turning into a huge red cloth, covering the sky and the sun, and covering Lizu. And at the moment of approaching Lizu, the flames twisted violently and rotated, evolved into a huge fire tornado, and Lizu was trapped in the center of the tornado. Thunder had already crashed down and hit the fire tornado. Thunder and fire. The scorching temperature forced the Kryptonian steel body to retreat temporarily. The thunder spear connected to the thick thundercloud and the madly swirling fire tornado caused such a powerful force that even Supergirl didn't want to get close to it, let alone the others, who all retreated. The giant girl seemed to have become a good cover, and the laughing people, whose bodies were already fragile, gathered behind her. The giant girl grinned, unhappy, but didn't say anything. The flames burned up to the sky and covered the clouds. Supergirl watched quietly from the side. She didn't use her supervision. Under such a mighty force, her iron body would also be injured. Lizu had no chance of surviving, but things would not end so cleanly. A ball of something that was almost melted into iron juice flew out. It was Lizu. He was dissolved by the violent thunder and fire, and even his legs were lost in the iron juice. It looked like he was about to be evaporated completely, without a trace left. Supergirl's eyes just lit up red, and her hot vision passed through the boiling iron juice and pierced his chest completely. The iron juice could no longer condense into a human form, and Lizu was doomed to die. But at the last moment, he threw something and hit the giant girl. Then he fell straight down. Maybe his original target was Supergirl, but the passing of life had left him with no strength, and he lost his aim. Maybe it was just because the giant girl was big and easy to hit. But he still succeeded. No one dared to underestimate Lizu's dying counterattack. It was a bottle, which hit the giant girl and broke. As for the laughing people standing on her, they fled at the first opportunity. The green liquid was sprinkled on the giant girl, and there was no problem afterwards. The giant girl patted her chest and found that she had not changed at all. "How do you feel?" Supergirl flew in front of the giant girl and asked, while scanning the giant girl with her X-ray vision. "No feeling, even feeling a little comfortable?" the giant girl asked in confusion. Supergirl stared at the giant girl in confusion, but was sure that nothing terrible had happened to this woman as big as a tall building. No, she seemed to have become stronger and more powerful after coming into contact with the green liquid. Suppressing the doubts in their hearts, everyone led by Supergirl landed on the ground and looked at the iron juice splashed all over the ground. Everyone else gathered around. Giganta shrunk her body. Hawkman and Hawkgirl folded their wings, and Green Arrow took an arrow and poked the iron juice. "He's dead," Shazam said, and the thunder clouds above his head also dissipated, revealing the sky after the nuclear explosion. Supergirl nodded and said affirmatively, "Not a toy. Lizu was dead, and it was not a toy substitute who died. Maybe he was going to raid our base, but he didn't expect Captain Atom to suddenly lose control, and he didn't expect to run into us directly. Firestorm was the first to fly up. He didn't care about the fact that Lizu, who didn't live up to his name, died. What happened now only proved that it was a wrong decision for the Laughing Bat to value him. We should." Supergirl was about to say something, and the sky suddenly darkened above her head. Did the sky fall? No. She looked up, but she only found that it was a foot that was getting bigger and bigger. Boom. The huge foot fell towards Supergirl. Chapter 260 Batman Slaughterhouse, Part 1. The red cape flashed and escaped from under his feet, but several people were accidentally crushed and could not even scream. Supergirl raised her head slightly and flew to the top of her head, rising to a position parallel to the line of sight of the giant girl. The one who suddenly grew bigger and stepped on her was the giant girl, and the giant girl at this time was very abnormal. The giant girl's eyes were red, and her body grew rapidly. 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, 90 meters, 110 meters, 140 meters. She stretched out her hand and just waved it lightly and slapped Hawkman away like slapping a mosquito, leaving only a bloody red dot in her palm. The arm stretched out with a terrifying killing power like a natural disaster. Several people who laughed wildly around were immediately implicated, and many died very suddenly. Shazam and Firestorm released energy at the same time. Thunder tore through the giant girl's skin like an iron rake, revealing her muscles. The flames burned her flesh, making a sizzling sound. The giant girl seemed to have a sense of taste. She slapped the eagle girl and stomped the beast boy into a meat paste. The giant girl, who was not afraid of pain and death, reminded Supergirl of the Superman she met in the Arctic. "It's that thing." Supergirl remembered what Lizu threw when he was dying. She clenched her fist and bombarded the giant girl's head like a missile. The red cape pierced through the giant girl's head like lightning. Boom. The giant girl's body fell, causing a tremor comparable to an earthquake. The earth was pressed into a huge pit, and the huge airwave retreated. The Green Arrow at the edge was the first to be blown away, rolling on the ground for several rounds and breaking his leg. It's the virus that turned Superman into that thing. Supergirl looked at the solidified iron juice on the ground with caution. For people like him, death may just be a means for him to complete his plan. Death also has value, not the end of everything. There was such a madman before, and then he died, and another person became him. It happened that everyone present knew him. They all knew the horror of this kind of person. Maybe he deliberately waited for us to gather together, just to infect one of us with that virus. Supergirl didn't look back. In her opinion, if she was the one infected, this battle might not be suspenseful. Perhaps the only thing they can be thankful for is that Lizu's plan failed. At the end of his life, he could only choose the giant girl. The giant girl fell behind Supergirl with a big hole in her head. The blood from the dead body was coagulated. The smile on the face of the corpse was still there. In addition to the zombie virus, they were also infected with another virus. He is very dangerous. Fortunately, he died. This time Firestorm did not deny Supergirl's words. Regardless of whether Supergirl's guess was right or not, the current result was not optimistic. At least Lizu's actions caused them a lot of damage. Everyone quickly reorganized. Supergirl's eyes swept over the seriously injured Green Arrow and Hawkgirl, who had a broken wing and a bloody back. Just now, the giant girl suddenly attacked, and the scene was in chaos. Several people died, and many people were injured, but only the two of them were the most seriously injured. A flame also represented the end of this sudden battle. At this time, in the coastal city far away from Metropolis, this city once belonged to Green Lantern Hal Jordan, and now it is one of the places where the Laughing Bat stays. He came here to find the lover of an old friend, but unfortunately he came up empty-handed. Suddenly, he looked in the direction of Metropolis. The report from Supergirl and others had reached his ears. Dead. Ho 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 ho, the Laughing Bat's smile became more and more exaggerated and disgusting. Metropolis. Hundreds of meters of female corpses burned up in flames. The Laughing Bats, who first experienced the nuclear explosion and then faced the sudden disaster, grinned, dragged the wounded, and left the already devastated city in embarrassment. Above the wasteland, the sunlight suddenly deflected, and a figure gradually became clear from blurry. Lizu patted his chest with lingering fear. This is terrible. Only this life is left. He put his hands on the pergola, looked into the distance, and muttered to himself, it's almost done. I still have to stay in this world for a long time. In the team far away from the wasteland of Metropolis, Hawkgirl, with one wing, grinned, holding the hammer in one hand, and swept her eyes over Supergirl and others in front. Supergirl seemed to notice something, and turned to look at her. I didn't expect you to be like this. Still miss the old feelings? Supergirl's eyes fell on the hammer in Hawkgirl's hand, mocking. Old feelings? Hawkgirl laughed ho ho in her throat, and the laughter was crazy, making others frown. It sounded a little irrational, more sick than them. I just took back what belongs to me. If he hadn't been unlucky, I would have torn him to pieces. Man, ha. I didn't expect you to be a staunch feminist Green Arrow, who was also a wounded soldier, sneered. After being infected with the virus, their verbal mockery was no less than those bastards in Gotham. Hawkgirl just raised her hammer towards Green Arrow. Snap, a bolt of lightning flew over. She swung her hammer and smashed the lightning. Shut up, Green Arrow, said Shazam, with sparks still flashing between his fingers. His face was as pale as a zombie, and his smile was particularly bright. Now, let's go to Washington. Now that Captain Atom has played his role, we should wait for the final battle. But I have to say one thing in advance. He has a bad temper if he is unhappy. Shazam's eyes swept over Green Arrow and Hawkgirl, and finally settled on Supergirl. You won't be able to laugh. Ha 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 ha. That scene must be very funny. Ha 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 ha. In the Batcave, the dark cloak was spread on the ground. Batman, who returned to his secret base, pressed the swollen corpse with his left hand, and pressed the right ear of the Batcowl with his right hand. You still blow up the entire metropolis. I said he was crucial. It seemed to be a statement, but it was actually a question. He was communicating, and the other end of the communication was Lizu. Lizu's helpless voice reached Batman's ears. The signal tower here is broken. How did you contact me? How did the Laughing Bat contact them? That's how I contacted you. Lizu didn't seem to continue to dwell on the reason. You are staying in the Batcave now? Yes, Lizu's voice sounded excited. Help me get a Batmobile. Impossible. Batman almost didn't think about it and directly refused. Lizu didn't seem to think that this matter could succeed. You are so stingy. Tell me, what do you want from me? Batman's words are always as brief as possible. Answer my question first. Okay. Lizu seemed too lazy to argue. The fleas that the Atom turned into are jumping around in his body, and his body can no longer control it. As for why the laughing virus didn't control Captain Atom, I guess it's because of his energy body that makes him immune to the virus. Everything has to wait until my people get the virus back and do some research. Your people? Batman seemed to have heard for the first time that Lizu could actually insert his own people into a group of crazy people infected with laughing. This matter is obviously not that easy, otherwise they wouldn't have to act separately. If we just find the antidote and cure the virus in the laughing bat, wouldn't that end everything perfectly? Yeah, I died once for this. You don't know how important my life is. Lizu complained about his loss. Batman was silent for a moment before saying, everyone's life is precious. It's a rare experience to die once. You contacted me. What's the matter? Lizu didn't seem to be interested in the topic. I died once too. Batman said. What? I said I died once too, and the body was right in front of me. Thank you, fifth slave, for the 100 Kidian coins reward. If nothing goes wrong, I should be able to update a few more chapters over the weekend to celebrate the average subscription of more than 200 in the past few days. Chapter 261, Batman Slaughterhouse, Part 2. Hasn't the Batman of this world turned into a madman? Lizu's voice sounded very distressed. The constant occurrence of unpredictable variables has made him extremely anxious. But he is indeed me, Bruce Wayne. I understand what you mean, Lizu said, and the sound of scratching the head could be heard from the other side. There is a second you, Bruce Wayne, who appears. Then who is he, and why did he die in that cave with bad feng shui? He is wearing bad tights. It's casual clothes. Batman raised his hand and unbuttoned the body, revealing his chest, because it has been soaked in the water for too long and there is no instrument to detect. The specific age of the body cannot be determined. Don't tell me you are taking off your own clothes. Batman said calmly, speeding up the pace of unbuttoning his clothes. I need to confirm something. I believe this is very important to you as well. He has scars on his body. Batman's scars. I can vaguely make them out. Batman held up a flashlight and observed carefully. This is a hidden injury left during training. This is Ducard's burn. This is a knife wound left by Harvey. That was when he first became Two-Face, and his mental state was far more unstable than it is now. Lizu on the other side suddenly said, as far as I know, Two-Face died in Arkham Asylum, along with those old guys you know. Only a few left Gotham for business and escaped temporarily. Batman did not talk too much about Two-Face, but continued to check the questions left by Scarecrow. This is Catwoman. Can I ask some gossip? Lizu's voice sounded like a raging gossip fire. He is me, but different. Batman directly ignored Lizu's question and continued. Some of his injuries are not they are new injuries. He is older than me, half a year, or a year. Batman stood up, and his low voice could not hear his emotions. He has been watching all this in a very rational state, as if the body lying on the ground is not himself. If there is a chance, I really want to introduce you to something that stays in my hallucination. You will definitely not go crazy, Lizu said, and then he also gave the final conclusion in time. So, this body is the real you. Everything can be faked. I need to extract his body cells and tissues and test them after going out. Batman took out the utensils from his body and concentrated on extracting cell tissue samples. Lizu in the headset said, since you can be sure that it is you, I think I can guess what's going on. Another dimension, another universe, Batman also said. But why did he find Bruce Wayne and then kill him? During the discussion, Batman stepped into the water again. Maybe there are answers I need deep in the Batcave. Lizu rarely calmed down. It's not that he is so approachable, knowing that he should understand the Master's mood at this time and give space to comfort Batman. It's simply because he met an acquaintance who he didn't know very well. I ran into an acquaintance, and she probably pissed off the laughing bat. He sounded a little distressed. Have you ever picked up a naked woman on the street? Batman was silent to the extreme before this question. No, he said. Lizu ignored Batman's answer and asked, so, based on your experience of picking up naked women, what should I do better? Batman simply chose to remain silent. Lizu didn't seem to want to wait for Batman to give an answer. It's definitely not suitable for me to be a hero saving a beautiful woman, but when I saw her, I suddenly felt that she could be of great help. By the way, will a villain like me who can save people get a reduced sentence in your place? Batman just said, you just nuked a city. That wasn't me. Okay, I did it. After all, we are all here to save the world. To be honest, I rarely do this. He sounded like he was bending over and picking up something. Batman was silent and continued to explore the Batcave. Passing through the narrow waterway, the water under his feet gradually became shallower. This was a place that Batman didn't remember, and it was obviously a place specially opened up by the laughing bat. I think I know what he's going to do. His voice sounded a little angry. Batman would not be angry. After putting on a tights and a black cape, he would become a rational Dark Knight. This was the consensus of everyone. Even when facing Superman, he dared to confront him head on with his mortal body. But now he was actually angry and even sad. In front of Batman was a huge arena that could be said to have hollowed out most of the underground of Gotham. Just 10 meters away from Batman, a corpse was lying on the ground, crawling forward, and it was obvious that he was struggling. With just a glance, Batman was sure that it was also Bruce Wayne. He didn't have time to squat down and check the corpse, and then take samples to test whether it was really Bruce Wayne, because not far behind the corpse, there was another corpse. This corpse was wearing a batsuit, but the hood was taken off, revealing white hair on the temples. That was the old Batman Bruce Wayne with grey hair on his temples. The site was far away, one corpse after another, placed here in a mess. Further away, there is a hill made up entirely of the bodies of Batman Bruce Wayne. They seemed to have experienced an extremely horrible and irresistible battle, and finally died here. Batman Slaughterhouse. I think I guessed his purpose. Batman's voice was a little hoarse, and the voice became intermittent after the hood was transformed. He is looking for something, and he needs to open the channel to the multiverse. Captain Atom is just the energy source to open the channel. Lizu said, let me guess, you saw your own body again? Yes. Lizu then asked back, and his voice did not sound relaxed. Then can I guess that he can find many Batman, some of whom have been killed, but there are still some Batman who have not been killed? Batman was silent. Hey, this woman is awake. Hey, wait, don't fight. You can't beat me unless you transform now. Batman immediately cut off the connection. He was not in the mood to listen to the entanglement and story between Lizu and a woman who had just woken up and found that she was not wearing clothes. Looking over the mountain of corpses, Batman held his breath. He heard knocking sounds and struggling laughter. There were still people imprisoned here, and from the familiar sound, Batman felt an unprecedented anger. Thank you Hungry Sword for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 262 Red Hair. In Washington, the shadows of tall buildings are stretched out in the sunset. The dim sunlight and the street lights that have just been turned on illuminate this lonely and desperate city. At the door of the white building that once represented one of the greatest landmarks in the world, a huge rack replaced the stars and stripes to ensure that enough people can see what is on the rack. Corpses wrapped in battle suits. They used to be superheroes who protected the world, but now they are displayed like exhibits, cruelly nailed to the racks in various ways, keeping their postures. A woman with a cloak covering her face walked through the street, stepping on the sunset. She looked at the corpses hanging, like they were nailed to the cross from afar. Everyone who came here was like this. They were wearing cloaks, like pilgrims. They were also like mourners, coming to send those superheroes on their last journey. This was the last thing they could do. The greater role of the cloak is to make them unable to recognize each other, and they may be exposed at any time, and the laughing maniacs may find evidence that their true identity is a superhero, or a supervillain or something like that. On the exhibition stand, the closest one was the corpse of Wonder Woman. Her shield and sword were hung on iron hooks, and her body was pierced by nails. She looked extremely miserable, but even in death, the determination in her eyes never faded. The steel bones and flesh beside her were rotting. After he lost his vitality, the mechanical parts of his body corroded and broke out, making him the most terrifying among these corpses. The Green Lantern's ring was flying all the time, trying to break free and find a new host. But every time the ring was about to fly 10 meters away from the Green Lantern's body, a green barrier would appear and stop it. No matter how the ring changed direction, it would be stopped by the wall. After looking at the corpses of superheroes one by one, the woman finally fixed her eyes on the corpse with the trident inserted. Arthur. Her eyes were confused for a moment, but eventually became firm. There was an endless stream of people who came here to visit like her. Superheroes were once the hope of this planet, but now their bodies are hanging here. Countless people came in disbelief, watching all this in silence. Even if you can't recognize all the superheroes, there are always one or two who have become the center of the city's topic and appeared in your city. In this world, who else can stop him? There is no Superman or Flash here. They will come to save us. The voice of a little boy suddenly sounded under a short cloak. The adult next to him was startled and quickly covered his mouth. Although this city has not developed the tragedy of massacre like other cities or forced people to move, it does not mean that you can speak freely here. If you want to live, you have to control your mouth and make acceptable free speech. Where are you from? The woman under the cloak lowered her head and asked the boy. The light flashing in the boy's eyes was exactly what adults lost. Central City. The boy broke free from the big hands of his parents and answered. That's the Flash's city, yes. He raised his chin, looking extremely proud. He can always save everything. The adult standing next to the boy covered the boy's mouth again and said to the woman in the cloak, "Sorry, ma'am, but this topic should not be continued." The woman ignored the adult, just smiled at the boy, stretched out her hand and carefully adjusted the cloak to ensure that it covered her face, and then walked away. Not only this city, but the world is also finished. Only children with fantasies in their hearts are still expecting justice to prevail. Hurry, hurry up. The crowd suddenly became chaotic. The woman looked up at the sky and saw the laughing people led by Shazam. They flew low, leaving behind a string of creepy laughter. Aren't they in Metropolis? The woman narrowed her eyes and looked at the end of the team, which was Green Arrow and Hawkgirl. They were ambushed and injured. There are still people in this world who can hurt them. Her eyes were shining, and hope was finally born under the almost irresistible despair. Boom. A wave of air suddenly hit, without any reason. It was as if a real air current hit the fleeing crowd, and the people who came to make a pilgrimage in cloaks were thrown to the ground. Screaming, running, trampling, people were in chaos for a while. The boy and his parents were first hit by the air current, and then hit by the crowd, completely scattered, and finally fell to the ground. He lay on the ground, trying to stand up, but was knocked down again and again, and trampled by shoes. At the critical moment, a stream of water suddenly appeared, blocking the pointed crocodile leather shoes that kicked at the boy's head in panic. Then a pair of hands helped him up. "Be careful next time," the gentle female voice warned, but it was hard to hide the anger at this sudden disaster. The boy stared blankly. Her cloak was blown away by the wind, revealing her beautiful red hair. The red-haired woman put on her cape again, covering most of her face, and sent the boy back to his parents. "You should be careful next time." The boy held his parents' hands and said in surprise, "You, Super." He paused, glanced at the corpse hanging in the distance, and changed his words. "Superheroes will always bless us, huh? Where are you going?" "I will stay in Washington for a while." She looked at the building that the group of laughing people last entered, and smiled at the boy. "I hope everything will get better. You'd better leave Washington as soon as possible." "We will leave tonight," said the boy's parents. He did not see what happened just now, or he saw it, but just pretended not to see it, so as not to cause trouble. Maybe going to the countryside, away from the crowd, away from the big city with superheroes, can continue to linger. As for how long he can live, who dares to guarantee it? Batman passed through the mountain of corpses and pushed open another door. At this time, his heart was filled with anger, and his rationality was almost completely suppressed by anger. Ha ha ha, woo woo. The laughter was accompanied by sobs, and it sounded so painful. Refreshing? Perhaps the owner of this voice is on the verge of mental collapse. There are no traps along the way, and there are even lights on the path. Finally, Batman stopped in front of an iron cage. As soon as he approached, the strong stench of rotting corpses and feces accumulated together. The flashlight illuminated the not-so-spacious iron cage, in which there was a corpse, which was torn to pieces. The corpse was naturally Bruce Wayne's. Someone is using Bruce Wayne's corpse to feed the thing in the iron cage. The figure squatting in the corner trembled when he felt the light source. Batman sorted out his emotions and tried to ask in a low and hoarse voice, "Alfred?" Chapter 263. The man tied to the treadmill. The figure in the corner shuddered after hearing the shout, and his body froze. Then, the stiff body slowly turned and faced Batman. The old face was covered with frost and painful ravines. His eyes were dim, and his once carefully groomed Mediterranean hairstyle was now a mess. The most dazzling thing was the smile that could not be eliminated from the corner of his mouth, a smile that showed his gums. Alfred, Bruce Wayne's old butler, was the one who really raised Bruce Wayne like a father. I should have thought of it earlier. Bruce Wayne looked at the old butler with a twisted mind and tortured body, and his emotions almost got out of control. Every Batman has his own old butler, and the Laughing Bat is obviously no exception, but his twisted personality made him choose to assimilate his butler. Hehe, Alfred was laughing, but his laughter was very painful. From his haggard face and trembling figure, it can be seen that the Laughing Bat has spent a lot of effort to completely distort his mind. Batman solemnly assured the old butler, "I will get you out, Alfred." The twisted old butler was still just laughing, with tears in his eyes. His mind was not completely twisted, but he had only a glimmer of rationality left, which could not do much for this body. Batman raised his hand. The lock on the iron cage might be indestructible to the old butler, but for Batman it was just a small problem that could be solved with a little effort. The lock was easily broken, and the iron cage door opened. Batman comforted the old butler in the manner of comforting a frightened little animal, took him out of the iron cage that imprisoned him, and carried him on his back. The skinny body could not feel much weight. Hehe, the old butler's laughter and Batman's silent footsteps floated back and forth in this darkest underground cave in the world. After meeting Alfred, this trip to the Batcave should have ended here, but Batman knew that there was something he could not figure out. If this door was closed by Alfred, then who was closed by the other door? Soon, Green Lantern opened another door. He just turned the door knob easily. The Laughing Bat didn't even add any door locks. The space behind the door was very large. The clear sound of mechanical bearings turning was continuous and dense like raindrops. It was obvious that the engineering machinery at the door was operating. The first thing that appeared in front of Batman was a huge treadmill. There was a red blurry figure on the treadmill. The reason why it was called a blurry figure was that Batman's naked eyes could not capture the other person's appearance. When a person shakes his hand quickly in front of his eyes, after images will appear in front of his eyes, and the palm seems to be transformed into several. But if you speed up again, the palm will be blurred, just like staring at the rotating tires after a car accelerates. That is beyond the level that the human eye can capture. Obviously, the figure running wildly on the treadmill is faster than the rotating tires. There is a tube connected to the head of the red figure. The long tube is like a long worm that sucks human brains, and it extends all the way to the roof. Flash. The figure running non-stop on the treadmill is the Flash. This is also the reason why most superheroes in the world died, and only he disappeared after a small number of superheroes turned into laughing maniacs. No matter which Flash he is, the Laughing Man captured him and made him run on the treadmill, not just to have a human power generator. Did he? Batman's face changed. He glanced at the running Flash and quickly threw the bat dart in his hand. The dart easily cut off the long tube connected to the Flash's brain. At the same time, the running Flash finally got rid of control and immediately fainted on the high-speed treadmill. The Flash was thrown out by the inertia of the treadmill. It's time to go. Batman carried Alfred on his back, pulled the Flash, and quickly merged into the darkness. Outside Wayne Manor, a sewer manhole cover was pushed open. Boom. A man in a red uniform was thrown out of the sewer, and he fell to the ground motionless. Next was Batman carrying Alfred. After looking at the huge manor again, Batman took the two away quickly. 20 minutes later, Gotham's abandoned warehouse. The iron door opened, and the superheroes such as Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, etc. who were wandering around the warehouse board immediately turned their heads and looked at the door. "You're back." Superman flew to the door of the warehouse, looked at Batman and asked, "How is it?" Batman had no intention of chatting with the toy Superman in front of him. He turned his head left and right and finally asked, "Where is he?" Superman replied, "Underground." Batman didn't say anything else. He carried two people and quickly went to the basement of the warehouse. "I think that person looks familiar." Flash withdrew his gaze from the basement and scratched his cheek and said, "Maybe it's another speedster." In the basement of the warehouse, Lizu was lying on the bed for testing and the instrument provided by Penguin. His nurse was Harley Quinn. "Everything is normal." Harley Quinn tapped the computer. "It's a pity that I didn't see you die in person, but there are really no side effects after death. I'll let you see it next time I have a chance." "Oh, I feel like my stiff neck seems to be completely healed." Lizu casually grabbed the hunter hat beside the bed. This thing can suppress his confusion and laughter. Although it would be better to wear a full set of clothes, it's not now. After arranging the woman he picked up halfway, he returned to Gotham. "Is this your reward?" Lizu looked at Batman who appeared in the basement, and his eyes swept to Alfred and Flash, saying, "They both look a little bit off. It's time to fight back." Batman spoke in a dull voice. "Almost." Lizu took the shirt from Harley Quinn and put it on slowly. "I heard that Batman always has a thorough plan and always has a backup plan. Are you ready?" "No," Batman answered decisively this time. "This is not like you." As he said, Lizu took a look at the unconscious figure placed on the other two beds by Batman. Lizu said again, "You are very angry." Batman did not deny it. "Then fight back." Lizu's straightforward decision stunned Batman. Batman knew very well that almost everyone here belonged to Lizu, and it was obviously not enough to rely on Batman alone to solve the troubles of this world. Don't underestimate supervillains. When you are angry, you should fight back and seek revenge instead of tolerating it again and again, right, yo-yo? Harley Quinn waved her fists and laughed. "Ha ha ha, that's right, the guy was beaten to the ground." His smile was so real and fake that it was unbearable. That smile should only belong to Ms. Joker. At this moment, the Flash woke up. He raised his trembling arms and took off his hood, revealing his gray hair and a wrinkled face. "Ms. Joker, Toyman, it's you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 264 The Flash's Memory. "Do you know each other?" Batman looked at the Flash in confusion. As far as he knew, the Flash and the unknown third-rate bastards in Gotham would not have any intersection. "Of course I know him," the Flash nodded as a matter of course. This action seemed to have taken a lot of effort from him. The treadmill took away too much of the Flash's vitality. He stared at Lizu with cloudy eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "After bringing you back from the Flashpoint world, I have guessed more than once that I might have done something wrong." At this time, Lizu was also a little surprised. "You actually still remember me?" He once thought that after the Flash changed history again, all memories would be overwritten by new memories, and he could also become a local of unknown origin in this city. "Of course I remember. After the timeline changes, history will not be recorded by anyone or anything, but only exists in my mind." The old Flash looked very painful. "There are many stories in my mind that no one remembers." It seems that this is not the first time that the Flash has changed the timeline. After the history of the Flashpoint world was reset, the history belonging to Lizu was also erased. He should have disappeared with the Flashpoint. But he survived because the Flash and Batman Thomas thought he did not belong to that world and thought he was a small character brought by the Reverse Flash, probably to prevent the Flash from ever correcting history. "We originally thought that bringing you back would not affect this world, but it is precisely because of bringing you back. The Flashpoint effect. Everything is still my problem. If there was no Lizu, would the Batman of this world kill the Joker? It is unknown, but it is possible that he would not. The cause of everything may be that the Flash brought back someone who did not belong to this world. But I have to thank you for saving my life, right?" Lizu smiled. If it were not for the Flash, maybe he would return to the DC world again, and he might fall directly into nothingness, or it might still be the Flashpoint world. At least his life was saved. Seeing Batman's eyes, Lizu leaned forward and cleared his throat and said, "Ahem. Please allow me to briefly introduce myself. The name of Toyman is not self-proclaimed, but given by your father, Batman Thomas Wayne, and your mother, Ms. Joker, Martha Wayne. I'm indeed not from this world. My appearance should be attributed to the Flash's impulsive running. The Flash's vicissitudes of life could not help but smile bitterly. Yes, if it weren't for him, but he can't do anything now. Modify the timeline again to stop the Flash who is about to bring Toyman back to this world? Not to mention that he can't do it now. Even if he really does it, can he guarantee that there will be no other problems? Several changes in the timeline have told him the answer. Everything will only get worse and worse and worse, and it can never be reversed. Batman on the side was stunned. Although all this is just another universe, another world story for him. But hearing that his parents, who should have closed their eyes and lived in Crime Alley in another world, one became Batman and the other became the Joker, the news itself was unbearable for him. Lizu continued, "I used to be a subordinate of the Joker. Oh, by the way, Bruce Wayne has long died in that world." The Joker girl also said, "You really don't look like a Batman. In our world, many bastards died under Batman's hands. He has also become like this." The he Batman refers to is the laughing bat who kills people indiscriminately and no longer cares about the bottom line. The old Flash explained, "No, Bruce, Thomas is a kind person. Although he does not regard not killing as his bottom line, he is indeed a Batman. He doesn't have anything to say to me." "There is a letter," said the old Flash. "I gave it to the Batman of this world, but it can be seen that he has failed Thomas' expectations." Batman quickly walked out of the shock and confusion. Different universes have different things happening, not to mention that he has witnessed countless of his own corpses. Laughing Bat, what does he want? Batman quickly sorted out his emotions. No one could see how turbulent his heart was. Just looking at the appearance, he was very calm. He became like that. He was crazy. He grabbed me and controlled me to run, using the Speed Force to help him open countless multiverses. It seemed that he was looking for Bruce Wayne. The Flash confirmed an answer that both Batman and Lizu had confirmed. Looking for Bruce Wayne? Batman's voice was full of doubt. Just like the mountain of Bruce Wayne's corpses in the Batcave. Find Bruce Wayne and then kill them? I don't know what he's going to do. Why didn't he find Batman and kill them? Maybe it's simply because he's turned into a madman like the Joker. The Flash shook his head, his tone weak. The Speed Force is just a key, and my body is about to reach its limit, so my work as a key to collect Batmans from other multiverses will end, because I'm completely dead. Fortunately, he can only teleport Bruce Wayne through me, instead of going directly to other worlds, otherwise he would have countless Flashes. Batman analyzed, that's why he needs Captain Atom to provide him with energy. This means that he should have a perfect backup plan to connect to other multiverses. Batman analyzed calmly and talked about Bruce Wayne as an objective thing, as if it wasn't him who died. If I could run again, maybe I could stop him, the old and elderly Flash said regretfully. The overuse of the Speed Force has put his body into a state of aging that cannot be reversed and repaired. Even if he is still a speedster, how can an old and weak speedster run to the speed of light? Batman just shook his head and said what Flash knew very well. Barry, modifying the timeline will only make everything worse. What Flash needed was just a comfort that had no substantial effect. Who else can save the world now? Flash looked at Lizu, and after a brief pause, he looked at Batman again. If there is anyone who can defeat the Laughing Bat and save the world, that person must be Batman. He is only willing to believe in Batman. Lizu grinned at the Flash's performance, which was somewhat similar to the Laughing Bat, making Flash frown. Lizu then said to the old Flash, "Batman will save the world, but so will Flash. What are your plans?" Batman didn't believe that Lizu would be the kind of person who would do meaningless things. The Flash's Speed Force can't be wasted, right? Thank you Void watching for the 500 starting coins reward. Chapter 265 International Mercenaries. Washington. The laughing man rushed in like a disaster victim. Whether it was the dying counterattack of the Toyman or the terrible person living in Washington mentioned by Shazam, they were all nervous. However, as time passed, they did not encounter the terrible incidents mentioned by Shazam here, and everything was stable. The seriously injured were bandaged and treated, and the lightly injured had fun. However, the order of the laughing bat was soon conveyed, and they had to rush for a new mission. This was destined to be a great mission. After all, it was to make the world full of laughter. The night shook the skirt, and the street lights gradually lit up. Hawkgirl, who had lost a wing and had a bloody back, was now bandaged. She stood in front of the hero booth and looked up at the superheroes. In her world, the concept of superheroes was not strong. They were all part of the Third World War, which was set off by Atlantis and Paradise Island, and swept across the European continent. Hawkgirl's eyes swept over several corpses and finally looked at Wonder Woman. "She's still beautiful, isn't she?" It was Shazam who spoke, and he followed Hawkgirl out. "We should inject some new companions with something," Shazam said. Hawkgirl took a last look at Wonder Woman, and then stepped to follow Shazam, but the confusion in her eyes seemed to finally become clear at this moment. Anyone who hurts the Queen must be punished. As the most loyal follower of the Queen of Paradise Island, she is willing to swear with her only remaining wing. 2 days have passed, and there are few pedestrians on the streets of Washington. People either choose to leave overnight, or choose to hide at home, and never go out. As for the military power of this land, they have already fallen. The laughing bat is not an ordinary character who underestimates the enemy. Under his wrist, the human army has no room for resistance. In the early morning, a figure wrapped in a cloak appeared on the empty street. The corpse was still hanging on the shelf of the booth, and the stench of the corpse could be smelled from a long distance. When superheroes are alive, they may be able to fly, control wind, thunder, rain and lightning, but after death, they will only stink and rot like ordinary corpses, just like dead rats floating in the stinky ditch. After staring at the corpse for a long time again, the figure took the initiative to take off the cloak, revealing red hair. She was ready to act, although it seemed a bit stupid. Shazam! The furious roar attracted the thunder in the sky. A panicked figure crashed the exhibition stand and was pushed to the ground by the thunder. The thunder angrily lifted up the asphalt road and pushed the woman with only one wing in front of the red-haired woman. The ground was severely deformed, the exhibition stand collapsed, and the bodies of countless superheroes were knocked into the sky. "Are you okay?" The red-haired woman didn't understand what happened. The laughers actually fought among themselves, but it seemed that Hawkgirl was at an absolute disadvantage. It was a pity that she had just made up her mind to do something big and encountered this situation. Cough. The one-winged Hawkgirl spat out a mouthful of blood. Although Shazam's angry thunder was shattered with a hammer, a small part of the scattered thunder still hit her. Boom. The ground sank. The red-haired woman's eyelids jumped, and in a flash, Shazam appeared in front of them. His feet sank into the ground, and it could be seen how much strength he had used. Shazam's right hand was holding a lightning spear, and the other end of the spear extended infinitely, extending to the sky, as if a chain of thunder was tied to the end of the lightning spear. The face reflected by the thunder had a divine power that made it impossible to look directly at it. "You shouldn't do this." Shazam raised the lightning spear in his hand. He pinched the lightning light. The human eye could not look directly at this strong light, and it might cause blindness, but the real power of the lightning spear was not the strong light it emitted, but the damage to the body when it was stabbed. Hawkgirl got up, raised her left hand to wipe the blood, and raised the hammer in her right hand high. "Men are always disappointing. You are a complete feminist, stupid matriarchal society theory." Shazam raised his wrist and shook it, and the lightning spear was thrown out. There was no need to aim. The lightning spear that escaped from Shazam's palm instantly released the speed that lightning should have. Lightning flashed. The arc and the air crackled. The tip of the spear was piercing the hammer that Hawkgirl barely lifted. The forces collided, but everyone could see that Hawkgirl was at a disadvantage. The hammer was wearing away the lightning, while the lightning was connected to the thick clouds above her head. The power of the lightning spear not only did not weaken, but became more fierce and powerful as the thunder clouds continued to transmit power. A lightning spear was just a vanguard. Other lightning and the thick clouds followed the guidance and flowed out, turning into rolling thunder and smashing down. Facing the thunder, Hawkgirl could only hold the hammer with both hands and try her best to block it, but she could only block a small part, and the rest would continue to overwhelm her, and even the red-haired girl beside her had to take action, because she was innocently involved in this battle. But even if she picked up the fork of Aquaman, it was still ineffective in the face of the rolling thunder! Exclamation mark. The blue beam came and hit the thunder instantly. There was another beam, and the clouds and thick clouds dispersed. The sudden strong reinforcement made the red-haired woman stunned. She turned her head to look for it, only to find that a person wearing a strange tights and a mask with only one eye exposed jumped out of a plane. The cannon that shattered the thunder and thick clouds just now was fired from the plane. Oh, international mercenary? Are you on the side of justice too? Shazam asked with a grin. He recognized the person. No, I always stand on the side of money. And I heard that your boss is Batman. I'm sorry, I have a grudge against him, and I won't accept his orders. The man looked at the red-haired woman, then at Hawkgirl, and finally asked, who of you two is my target? Forget it, come with me, and I'll kill the extra one later. Do you think you can snatch someone away from me? Shazam still smiled. Even if you used to be a headache for Batman, you won't be my opponent. The man who Shazam called a mercenary pulled out the short stick behind him, flicked his wrist, and the stick became longer, and he himself rushed towards Shazam at a very fast speed. A distance of more than 10 meters was crossed in just an instant. But he was still too slow. Even though Shazam was not like the speedster, who made hundreds of actions in a second, and whose brain consciousness could speed up infinitely to think, his speed still easily surpassed humans and most superheroes. Under Shazam's speed, the international mercenary seemed to be pressed in slow motion. One step, and another step. He was like a snail, slowly coming to Shazam, and swung out the stick. Shazam leaned back easily and dodged. He was smiling and calm. Raise your knee. Still easily dodged. In this battle, Shazam was invincible. However, Shazam was willing to admit that the opponent had exquisite fighting skills. If it weren't for his quick eyes, he might have been hit long ago. But the tight feeling of his ankle being tied made Shazam feel bad. He looked down, his face suddenly changed, and his smile became stiff. It was a bright rope that flashed with divine light. It should have been an exhibit together with Wonder Woman's body on the booth. The other party's voice came. Crackle, little ghost, answer me. What is the name of the one who gave you power? Chapter 266. Shazam's face changed drastically. As long as he said that name, his power would leave in an instant. Although he could shout out to regain his power in just 1 second, it was obvious that the other party was unwilling to give him that chance. The rope tied to Shazam's ankle had an irresistible force. He had to answer questions, tell the truth, and could not resist. He knew too much about the power on the rope. Shazam, no matter how unwilling and resisted, under the power of the lasso of truth, he still shouted out the name of the wizard Shazam. Thunder flashed, the thick clouds in the sky rolled back and left, and the sky suddenly became clear. When the lightning dissipated, the invincible Shazam had disappeared, and only a pale-skinned boy was left in the place, kneeling on the ground weakly. Perhaps he knew what would happen to him next, so he seemed a little panicked. He wanted to open his mouth and shout out that name again, Shaz. But what was faster was the sound of gunfire. Bang. The thin body fell to the ground, and blood flowed from the bullet hole in the back of the head that pierced the forehead, and quickly accumulated into a pool of blood. His eyes were full of unwillingness. It turns out that he is just an ordinary kid. The mercenary pulled the rope, and said with some disappointment. He looked at Hawkgirl and the red-haired woman and said, let's go. He has moved to Washington, not far away. Then he looked back at the white building and said, if I wasn't sure that there was only one kid playing with thunder here, I would definitely ask for more money. This thunder is really scary. But the method he gave is not bad. The starlight above his head is like the floral embellishment on the skirt of the goddess of night, delicate and beautiful. The masked man called mercenary by the late Shazam brought 2 women to a private bank in the suburbs of Washington. This is a private bank under the Wayne Group. As Bruce Wayne's private property, the walls here are inevitably reinforced with lead, which can naturally protect against the eyes of Kryptonians. When they came to the basement, there were already two people waiting here, namely Lizu and Harley Quinn. "You're back." Harley Quinn walked over excitedly and took Hawkgirl's hand. They got along well, at least they all came from the same hometown. "This is what you want." Hawkgirl took out a bottle of potion, which was the drug that infected the superheroes. Hawkgirl's method of entering the Laughing Batsmen by substituting a cat for a prince was not very clever. The only thing that surprised Lizu was that she could really bring back a sample. "You did a good job." Lizu picked up the bottle, shook it gently, and watched the toxins rolling in it. "I believe we will have an antidote soon." Lizu looked at the red-haired woman standing aside. When he first saw her, he was a little confused. She was not an unknown person. The red-haired woman was also a little restrained. She didn't know anyone here. The reason she followed was entirely because of a guess in her heart. "Mera from Atlantis, why are you here?" Lizu asked with his chin in his hand, looking like a routine. After knowing that the other party appeared in Washington and followed him voluntarily, the relevant information had been delivered to him. Mera, the wife of Aquaman. Some time ago, the Laughing Batsmen were seriously injured. Mera subconsciously glanced at Hawkgirl. She didn't expect that the other party was actually a spy planted in. "And I've heard about the rebels, but no one can hurt them, not even Atlantis. Perhaps you are one of the strongest rebels." Mera paused, and she really thought so. Supergirl, Shazam, Firestorm and other superheroes all failed. This force could not be unknown. But now she saw Lizu. She was a little disappointed. They were all unknown little characters, and she didn't know any of them, but she couldn't help but raise hope. Maybe this was someone who was hiding very deeply? Lizu shook his head and said, "We are not a rebel. No one wants to revolt. It's just that someone is looking for trouble with me. Now I'm very angry and want to kill him." Very simple, straightforward words. The Queen of the Sea was stunned. Mera was asked to leave. No matter what her identity was in the past, or how powerful she was, now to Lizu, none of them was as important as what was happening in front of him. Only Lizu, Harley Quinn and the mercenary were left here. This is a really good thing. It will definitely be worth a lot of money if it is sold. The international mercenary was fiddling with the lasso of truth in his hand, and in front of him was a Green Lantern ring that kept struggling but couldn't escape, Wonder Woman's sword and shield, and the metal part of Cyborg. Having said that, he was not too obsessed with these things. He took a few more glances and threw them away. Instead, he looked at the man in a green suit and an old antique hat on his head. "Where is my reward? You will never suffer any loss if you cooperate with me, Deathstroke." Lizu waved his hand gently, and the Harley Quinn immediately came with two large suitcases and placed them in front of Deathstroke, and then brought two more. She laughed at Deathstroke, but Deathstroke automatically ignored this crazy woman. No matter how cute and charming the other person looks, it can't change the fact that she is a lunatic. After a simple inspection, Deathstroke closed the suitcase and asked for confirmation. "These things will not suddenly become toys, right? If you have the same hobby of collecting as me, I may reluctantly help you change them into toys." Lizu replied. "Forget it, I like these papers. They are my treasures, haha." Deathstroke picked up the suitcase and said, "No one wants to joke with me, but they like to joke with their own heads." Walking to the door, Deathstroke stopped and said, "Next time there is such a good job, remember to contact me again." Lizu was too lazy to look at the pile of junk in front of him and summoned the prop box to sweep it all in. Shazam opened the door when he walked out, and Mera rushed in directly. "Please let me join too," Mera said bluntly when she entered the door. She had been holding Aquaman's fork in her hand, even though she knew that the other party was collecting superhero relics. "This is a simple personal grudge. If you have any conflicts with that bat, you can take action at any time." Lizu had already waved his hand and was ready to see him off. Mera was anxious and stood up with the fork. "You will need my strength. Is Atlantis still there?" Lizu asked back. "The most important power Mera has is of course Atlantis." According to the news he learned recently, the Laughing Bat acted very decisively. It took only 1 week to quickly wipe out most of the human forces. In the days after that, it miraculously dealt with the superpowers such as Paradise Island and Atlantis. Meryl lowered her head, with a hint of unwillingness on her delicate face, but she still said, Atlantis has been destroyed. Lizu only knew that Atlantis was defeated, but he never thought that a civilization would be destroyed. Who did it? He was very interested in this. Even if Lizu took action, he was sure that he could not solve Atlantis. The solution here simply means to win. I don't know, but she is wearing Batman's uniform. Batman's uniform? Lizu's eyes flickered faintly. If that's the case, Batman and Flash's previous speculation was not unexpectedly true. The laughing bat may have found what he was looking for. Or, the person he was looking for. Wait, you mean her? Batman, there is another woman. Chapter 267 Lex. According to what Mary said, Atlantis was suddenly attacked. The attack was very sudden, and there was only one person on the other side. The other side was dressed like Batman, but it was more suitable for action in the water. In the water, it was more relaxed than many Atlanteans. As for the huge sea monster that followed, although it was thrilling, it could not stop the Atlantean army. What was really scary was her water flow, like the nemesis of all Atlanteans. That day, the seawater on the bottom of the sea was dyed red, and the boiling red sea surface was boiling like hot soup. Countless Atlantean corpses were floating, countless and endless. Mera did not officially participate in that battle. She was rescued by the Lord of the Sea. The other side used his last strength to send Mera out of the sea, hoping that she would go to the land to seek help from the Justice League where Aquaman was. The Justice League has Superman, who will be a stabilizing force. But when she got to the land, she found that this world was no longer saved. The more she walked on the ground, the more she was sure of this. Even the Justice League, including Superman, had lost. Who else could save this world? Relying on the unknown man in front of her? She chose to join Lizu now, just to die for a good cause. After listening to what Mera said, Lizu said, Ms. Mera, maybe you will be interested in joining the counter-attack team we have formed. Yoya will be a good guide for you. They all have their own reasons to fight the laughing bat. The Harley Quinn kept waving at Mera. Obviously she was very happy to have a new companion. Finally, after arranging this impolite guest, Lizu came to another secret room. The wall automatically opened. Lizu stepped in, and the wall behind him closed again. The room was full of instruments, which made people marvel. The last time Lizu was so amazed was when he worked with Professor Lizard. Lizu glanced at the laboratory, pulled a chair to cushion his buttocks, looked at the bald man who was doing research, and said, your weapons are good. I remember that you only like to deal with Superman. I will protect this planet with humans' own methods. Whether it is Batman or Shazam, they have obviously crossed the line. The bald man raised his head, looked at Lizu, and said, although I don't want to admit it, the world was not so bad when Superman was here. I didn't expect you to miss Superman too. It's really ironic. Lex Luthor counterattacked. Is there anything more ironic than a third-rate bastard in Gotham who wants to defeat Batman to save the world? But it's interesting, isn't it? Although you are not mentally normal, you are different from the Madman Joker. Being interesting is not your fundamental purpose, it's just your cover. Perhaps it is, because they are both villains. Lex Luthor, one of Superman's biggest enemies, a man with the best mind on this planet, can easily see through Lizu's purpose. No one even knows when the cooperation between the two began. No one knows that they are actually cooperating. It doesn't matter if they deliberately concealed it, it's just that one of them was researching, and the other was too lazy to say it. Listening to the other's words, Lizu smiled, but did not deny it. Lex Luthor called him a third-rate bastard, and never denied it. He couldn't do the Joker's crime for fun, nor could he stick to his criminal beliefs like the Scarecrow and Two-Face. Even being a good guy or a bad guy didn't mean much to him. He just pursued in different worlds, to explore and understand those worlds, to satisfy his hobby of collecting, and to escape the call of the indescribable things. Although in his estimation, the indescribable things would take many centuries to find him, but judging from the situation in the last world, the facts were different from what he thought. Maybe time has no meaning for those things. Time is just something that constrains human thinking, and there are things that transcend time. In any case, Lizu has to make sure that he won't die in this world again. I'm really curious, how did you transfer those people away? Lizu seemed very curious. The reason why Hawkgyrl was able to successfully obtain the virus sample and the only laughing man in Washington was Shazam, and everyone else was transferred away. All of this was done by Lex Luthor. Whether it was the cannon that smashed the Sky Thunder or the transfer of Washington Force, it was all done by Lex Luthor. Because I'm Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor looked at Lizu, very confident. Lizu didn't understand his confidence at all. If Lex Luthor could deal with Superman or most superheroes, he would still believe it, but it was a bit beyond his expectations that he could make the laughing bat obedient and use all his strength. Seeing that Lex Luthor looked like he was sending him away, he knew that it was useless to stay. This is a virus sample. Lizu took out the virus sample that Hawkgyrl had taken out. When you get closer, you will find that Lex Luthor is studying a batarang, which was the batarang that Shazam used to infect Supergirl. Luthor tried to extract the poison from the batarang to reversely calculate the antidote, but the batarang was just a showpiece, and there was not much virus left. It will take me 3 days at the fastest, Luthor said, holding the virus sample. The world is on the verge of destruction. Every day of delay will only make it worse. Lizu suddenly smiled and said, 3 days, the world will not suddenly collapse, right? 3 days passed in a flash. When the goddess of dawn opened her eyes and the light shone on the world, the people who remained in Washington looked up at the sky. They felt the oppression and suffocation in the air. Today will be very unusual. The medieval-style banquet room, with oil paintings on both sides of the walls, is full of elegance and classicism. A long table that can accommodate 20 people is covered with a hand-knitted tablecloth. At the front of the long table, Lizu, wearing a thick black hunter windbreaker, was holding his face with his hands. He was the only one in the room. Soon, there was a knock on the door. It was Shirley. She pushed open the door and stuck her head in and said, "Mr. Colbert is here." Shirley has always been very good to the Penguin Man, who is almost as tall as her. Oh my god. The first thing the Penguin said when he walked in was, "I've been to the banquet before, but I didn't expect you to move here directly. Its decoration is gorgeous, isn't it, Oswald? Why don't you stay in Gotham and take risks here? If you lose, I will die wherever I hide." The Penguin was very straightforward. He pulled out a chair and sat on Lizu's right. "I see they are all flying out. Are we going to prepare for a major counterattack this time?" The Penguin didn't believe it when he said it was a major counterattack. If it really started a major counterattack, Lizu shouldn't be sitting here in a daze. Major counterattack? I guess so. Lizu glanced at the cold coffee in front of him, hesitated, and still didn't pick it up. "By the way, do you know why the laughing bat is afraid of Lex Luthor?" He was still ready to throw the doubt that had been involved for a long time to the natives. "Lex Luthor." The Penguin jumped up directly. "Is he in the same group with you? We are just a casual cooperative relationship." Lizu frowned, not understanding why the Penguin was so shocked. "Ahem. I mean, no, you worked with Lex Luthor, but you didn't know that he did the most heinous thing on this planet?" "Heinous?" The Penguin nodded vigorously, and he lowered his voice and said, "He cloned Superman." Chapter 268. Everything just begins. Lizu had never thought that this world would be so wonderful. He defined it as wonderful. If he had enough opportunities, he would not refuse to mass produce a superhero with a body of steel to fill his toy cabinet. So he completely understood Luthor. According to Penguin, Lex Luthor did not like the red cape that fell from the sky. Out of his pride as an Earthling, he made a Superman himself, a brand new replica that was exactly the same as Superman, including physical weaknesses and strengths. It was just that something unimportant went wrong in the end. It was estimated that only Luthor and Superman knew the inside story and details. In the end, Luthor destroyed the fake Superman, but no one dared to guarantee that he would not suddenly create a new one, a stronger one. Then I think I understand why the laughing bat values him so much, and even sent all his men. Luthor is really an incredible ally. Lex Luthor, who can create Superman, is definitely the biggest obstacle for the laughing bat, and from Lex's confident tone, it seems that creating another Superman is not a difficult task. Just as Lizu and Penguin were sitting at the long table drinking tea, quietly listening to the click, Click of the second hand of the clock on the wall. Washington on the other side became lively. The laughing bat did not show up, as if he had evaporated from this world. The ones who showed up were his laughing men, and there were more of them than before. Facing this group of powerful laughing men, only Hawkgirl, Harley Quinn, and Mera formed a simple team. They were completely surrounded, and the three of them had no chance of resistance. "What are we called?" Mera asked, leaning on Aquaman's fork. Her red hair fluttered slowly in the airflow caused by Hawkgirl's wings, like seaweed. The faint light shone through her bright red hair, setting off her delicate face. And what was even hotter than her beautiful red hair was the anger in her eyes. "Counter-attack team." Harley Quinn chewed bubble gum and swung her yo-yo with her right hand. Even facing a group of superheroes, she didn't look scared. "Suicide Squad." Harley Quinn muttered another name. She blew a bubble carelessly. The pink bubble gum exploded and was quickly rolled into her mouth by her tongue. She muttered, "It's all the same anyway." He said we had reinforcement. "You don't think that the three of us can?" Mera looked up at the sky. Half of the laughers on the opposite side could fly, but among the three of them, only Hawkgirl was there. Mera raised her head and looked at Hawkgirl flapping her wings in the sky in front of her. Her wings were flapping, and her body was twisted. Her other missing wing was restored, but it was a weird flesh wing with sharp bone spurs. Harley Quinn said that Hawkgirl's wings were all artificial products. Mera could understand that the flexible eagle wings were artificial, but the ugly and ferocious wings that exuded a strong aura of aggression were also artificial. Tick, tick, tick. Water dripped from the sky, and Mera could still hear Hawkgirl's undisguised panting. She must be laughing. Although Hawkgirl was not standing among the laughing people on the opposite side, she met all the characteristics of the laughing people and was even crazier than them. Especially the excited Hawkgirl now. She couldn't even control the saliva at the corners of her mouth. Hawkgirl had no problem, except that she often collapsed mentally, and the antidote was useless to her. Hearing Mera's words, Harley Quinn was surprised and said, "The three of us? I won't die here desperately." She seemed to have just realized that she was surrounded. "Little Flash, how long are you going to wait?" Harley Quinn looked up and shouted, and then, in that instant, Mera saw a red figure passing by, very fast, and in just a blink of an eye, the red figure rushed into the laughing people on the opposite side. The laughing Supergirl was suspended in the air. She really didn't understand the decision of the laughing bat. Hawkgirl suddenly rioted, and even killed Shazam. The entire booth was destroyed. And the laughing bat was not surprised at all, as if he had been waiting for all this for so long. Until now, Supergirl still remembers what the laughing bat once said. Everything, just beginning red flashed in front of her eyes, and Supergirl took action instantly. It was the Flash. Based on her understanding of the Flash, the other party's speed should be so fast that she would not have time to stop or resist, but the Flash in front of her seemed a little different. The Flash did appear in front of Supergirl quickly, but she could see the hand stretched out by the other party, and could barely raise her hand to stop it. However, no matter how much the Flash's speed slowed down, it was an indisputable fact that the other party was faster than her. The moment Supergirl raised her arm, the Flash disappeared from her sight, and at that moment, a needle pierced her neck. It was kryptonite. The feeling was very clear, the needle made of kryptonite. The drug penetrated into Supergirl's body through the needle and cleaned Supergirl's body in an instant. After a few seconds, the red figure that shuttled quickly returned to the side of Harley Quinn. "You are finally here." Harley Quinn breathed a sigh of relief and even spit out the gum in her mouth. "If you don't come again, we will definitely die." "Haha, that's terrible." "You are not afraid at all," Mera retorted in her heart, and then she stared at the Flash. Flash, a member of the Justice League, finally had a little self-confidence after seeing the other party appear. However, she still did not change her view that she was in the Suicide Squad. But this Flash was panting heavily, like an old man after running tiredly. Mera saw wrinkles from the corners of his exposed eyes. The Flash is an old man? How is it possible? Mera did not have too much time to think about these questions. The laughing people had undergone tremendous changes. Those flying in the sky were the first to lose their floating ability and fell to the ground one by one. And those who were already standing on the ground fell to the ground. The voice of the Harley Quinn also sounded at the right time. Our allies are finally here. What? Before Mera could ask clearly, the group of laughing people got up from the ground. The weird smiles on their faces disappeared. Supergirl instantly flew in front of the Suicide Squad, and Mera subconsciously raised her weapon. But Mera soon found that Supergirl seemed to have returned to normal. She focused her eyes on the Flash. That's right, among the three ladies present, Harley Quinn is a real lunatic, and Hawkgirl looks very abnormal. Mera herself knows that she is not well known on land. Flash, it's me. I'm glad you're back. The Flash took off his head, but what Mera didn't expect was that the Flash under the hood was so old. He shouldn't be running at full speed now, but should be leaning on a cane to watch the sunset. You. Supergirl shook her head and wanted to say something, but she suppressed it again. She said, "We are in big trouble. The Laughing Bat is waiting for you to save us." What? Mera exclaimed. Her brain was not enough. Aren't these superhero incarnations of the Laughing Man useful? Why did they spend so much effort to add strength to the rebels? The help that the Toyman said seemed to be the Laughing Man. Retreat to the suburbs. There are reinforcements there, said the old Flash. He sounded like he knew all this. It's too late. A black shadow tore through the air, like a meteor falling down. The friction of the air falling at high speed made the meteor full of flames. In an instant, the meteor fell, and the explosion range covered the entire street. The superheroes who had just returned to normal were instantly overturned by the air wave, and Firestorm was strangled by the neck at the first time. He tried his best to release the flames, and tried to struggle, but the owner of the big hand that grabbed him was unmoved. The rough grey monster hand that didn't look like a human squeezed hard, and Firestorm's neck was broken. Before they could see the specific appearance of the other party, the figure had jumped over and punched Supergirl with one punch. From one end of the street, across 5 traffic lights, to the other end, the long gully plowed in the middle almost exceeded the limit of vision. Mera slowly raised her head and looked at the small iron tower-like figure standing in front of her, blocking out the sky and the sun. Her pupils trembled, not because of the terrifying figure, not because of the twisted barbs, and not because of the opponent's forearms that were thicker than her waist, but because this terrifying monster also wore a Batman cowl. Just like the woman who conquered Atlantis, he was also Batman, another Batman with strange abilities. Inside the white building, the Laughing Bat was lying on a chair with his legs on the desk. A figure wearing ancient armor and holding a sword stood by the window, listening to the rumbling sound in the distance. He turned his head suddenly and looked at the Laughing Bat. "You and the Joker are becoming more and more alike. We should solve this matter more quickly. This is just a meaningless joke." Hehe. Before the Laughing Bat spoke, he always added a meaningless laugh. "No, I'm sure that what we are looking for is on him." The Laughing Bat turned his head. "Do you think he will lose so thoroughly? We are you, and we can guess what you are thinking." The person who spoke was a woman. If Mera was here, she would definitely recognize her. "Of course I will believe in myself. Haha." His voice lowered with laughter, sounding even hoarse, and he said what he had deliberately told Supergirl. Everything just began. Chapter 269. Doomsday. Everything happened too fast, as if it had been planned. While the Flash was using the antidote to restore the infected superheroes, the pursuers arrived, who had been waiting here for a long time. He crushed Firestorm to death, punched Supergirl, and even used the airwaves of landing to turn the superheroes into a mess, sweeping the whole scene with unparalleled oppression. Hawkgirl flapped her wings and raised the hammer in her hand high, but then she was thrown away casually, and both the person and the hammer were swept into the sky. The huge monster wearing Batman's cowl stretched out his finger towards the dazed Mera. Under his strange hand, Mera's beautiful and delicate head would definitely explode. He was indeed prepared to do so, and it seemed that no one present could stop him. The red heat vision came and slightly stopped his big hand. The huge monster looked into the distance, and the Supergirl, whose battle suit was damaged and bleeding from the corners of her mouth, had red eyes. It was she who kept releasing heat vision that saved Mera. The blazing light released by her eyes was also her burning anger. Mera didn't miss this opportunity. She stretched out her hand and pulled the still dazed Harley Quinn to quickly dodge backwards. Although she wanted to stab the fork, it was impossible to use it. The Kryptonian's heat vision couldn't hurt the other party at all. It just barely blocked the big hand, not to mention her own fork. The ground shook again. The vibration caused by the monster's foot stepping on the ground was no less than that of the giant girl. He certainly couldn't fly, but he used the reaction force of stepping on the ground to eject, which was faster than flying. In an instant, he jumped in front of Supergirl and punched out. The fist seemed to shake out a white circle, but this time Supergirl was prepared. She dodged while flying. With her small and agile body, she even counterattacked twice, one left hook and one uppercut. Her golden hair fluttered. Unfortunately, it had little effect. The fist that could easily crush 10 tanks pressed together with one punch only made the monster's head tilt back. On the contrary, the opponent's fist was too much for Supergirl to bear, and she dared not touch it at all. She did not choose to resist, but took a deep breath while retreating, pouting her red lips, and blowing out a cold wind, wrapping the opponent. The cold wind froze the wind, and also froze the monster's fist, trapping him in place. After blowing in one breath, Supergirl took a deep breath. She looked at the ice sculpture in front of her with caution and shouted loudly, "Quick, everyone retreat." The scattered superheroes had already supported each other to stand up. They had no time to celebrate after regaining consciousness before they had to accept the head-on attack. The ice only trapped the monster for a few seconds, but the ice sculpture was cracking rapidly, and cracks appeared. The first place the ice cracked was the hand. Supergirl wanted to spit out the cold air again, but the hand that broke through the ice grabbed her neck, just like Firestorm, who was strangled to death before. She was lifted up by the neck. The ice continued to crack, and the monster shook his body lightly and easily broke free like dust. The neck was clamped, and a sense of despair arose spontaneously. Supergirl raised her fist and hit the arm that was clamping her neck, but her arm did not move at all. Instead, the force on her neck became stronger and stronger, depriving her of the strength in her body. If she waited any longer, she would definitely die. She had no ability to resist. The power gap between the two sides was almost impossible to make up. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and the hammer flew over with a wild laugh of ha ha ha. Under Hawkgirl's swing, it hit the monster's side face, but it had little effect. The monster didn't even shake. But then a fork with water rolled up and hit the monster's armpit. Mera also came back, and it was impossible for her to give up Supergirl, who saved her life. Ha ha ha, try this, big guy. Harley Quinn had already jumped up and hit the monster's nose with a baseball bat. Crack, the baseball bat broke. Where did you get the prosthesis? Harley Quinn was surprised, but she pulled out a gun with her backhand, and her vibrant red and blue ponytail swung, and the muzzle flashed with fire, which was very bright. But it was useless. Another thing flew over. It was an arrow, but the arrowhead was not made of any special metal material, but a big red fist glove. Try this, bastard. The Green Arrow's mocking voice could be heard in the distance. The fist hit the monster's face, causing no damage at all, but the provocation ability was fully pulled. Anyone hit by this punch would be angry. Finally, the monster let go. He did not crush Supergirl to death, but roared to the sky and saw a wave of air surging with him as the center, blowing away Harley Quinn, Hawkgirl, Mera, and Supergirl. The Green Arrow's mockery was very effective, and the monster pounced on him. Give her back to me. He was not afraid, but pulled the arrow to a full moon, ready to face the flying monster. A red figure was faster than the Green Arrow's action of releasing the bowstring, pulling him to dodge quickly, and the full moon's bow and arrow also shot off, and the arrow was not accurate and hit the open ground. Green Arrow asked, "Flash, are you going to run? Do you think we can run away after encountering such a monster?" The old Flash did not wear a mask, but his tone did not sound desperate. Perhaps this is the Flash, who is always full of hope. Of course not. We will fight. But this is not a battlefield. This is not a battlefield? Then where are you going to fight? Even if you want to leave, will this monster let this group of people leave? Green Arrow wanted to ask a bunch of questions in return, but he failed because the fist swept over again, and Flash, perhaps because he was too old, could not dodge the fist. Green Arrow and Flash were punched and flew away, rolling on the ground for several circles, and finally stopped rolling after hitting a tree. The pain in the spine of the back told Green Arrow that his spine was sprained and it hurt a lot. Cold sweat instantly flowed down. 2 ribs were broken, and the right calf was fractured. Fortunately, both hands could still be used. Green Arrow sighed in his heart that he was lucky. If Supergirl faced such a powerful force, one punch could beat him into a meat paste. He didn't see that at the moment. When the fist came, the Flash, knowing that he couldn't dodge, stretched out his fist and collided with the monster countless times. The monster's fist was definitely unstoppable, but the Flash could speed up his fist. It looked like his arm was shaking. In an instant, he punched thousands of times, and each time he punched, he pulled it back violently when it was about to touch the monster's fist. Thousands of punches offset most of the force that came, which was why the Green Arrow was not seriously injured. I want to ask, do we have reinforcement? The Green Arrow struggled to get up. He pulled the bow to a full moon again. Even though he knew that the bow and arrow would not be very effective, it was the only thing he could do. One person killed them and made them lose their armor. The difference in strength made people despair. Chapter 270 Angry Green Arrow. The Penguin sat at the table anxiously, his feet hanging in the air, kicking restlessly left and right. This place is far away from the center of Washington, but he can't stand the noise comparable to a magnitude 4 earthquake. Even if he covers his ears, the floor under his feet will still send vibrations. The battle has already begun, and it sounds like a battle of overwhelming power. Did Lex Luthor create Superman? He couldn't help asking. Only Superman could make such a noise. He also hoped that this would make it easier to win this battle. The coffee is cold, Lizu reminded him calmly. I won't create Superman again. The door opened, and it was Lex Luthor. He pulled out a stool and sat on Lizu's left. They have Doomsday. He revealed the situation of the battle on the front line in one sentence. Doomsday? The Penguin was confused. He hadn't heard much about the other party's existence, but it didn't stop him from guessing who the protagonist who caused such a big noise was. You only know that I once created Superman. Don't you know why? This was not the first time Lex Luthor had seen the Penguin. The circle of rich people would not be too big. And they are top rich people. Their circle will only be smaller. It's just that Lex is not interested in the business of Penguin. Because you want to replace Superman. Penguin did not give him face at all. Using Lizu's words, we are all bad guys. Who is afraid of whom? You can say that Lex Luthor did not deny it. He shrugged his shoulders. But there is another fundamental reason. Superman is dead. Superman is dead. When has he died? This news was too shocking for Penguin. It can be said that he has never thought about it, and 90% of the people on this planet must have never thought about this problem. Will Superman die? Just like now, even if the world is about to be destroyed, Superman is just missing, and no one believes that Superman will die. There are also some people who have always believed that Superman will come down from the sky again to save the world. It was Doomsday who killed Superman on a planet far away from the solar system. After I knew this, I created Superman. Penguin curled his lips, obviously unwilling to believe what Lex said. Even if it is true that Superman was killed, Lex Luthor would never be as righteous as he said. He created Superman for his own benefit. As for peace and stability, and for protecting the Earth, no one is a good person, so this is useless. Lizu heard Lex's words and rubbed his brows with a headache. It seems that he is also Batman. After experiencing so many worlds, this world is the most troublesome for him. He does not have the ability to plan everything or predict the future. He used his life to exchange Hawkgirl for stealing virus samples, but he did not expect that the Laughing Bat never regarded the superheroes who had been transformed into laughing as important bargaining chips. Just the appearance of a Doomsday version of Batman made all Lizu's previous efforts a big joke. Didn't you guess? The Penguin's already unpleasant voice became even sharper. After a series of actions by Lizu, he already believed that Lizu was a bastard no less than the Joker. Although he might not be that crazy, he was magical enough and could predict things like a god. Now actually, Lizu did not hide his lack of intelligence. I know he is collecting Batmans from other worlds. It seems that the Doomsday version of Batman is one of his choices. The Joker Batman. Mirror also said that there is an underwater Batman in Atlantis, plus the Doomsday Batman. Batman is already difficult to deal with. If he has various abilities, it will definitely increase the trouble to the extreme. The most terrifying thing may be that we don't know how many such Batmans the Laughing Bat has found. We can only hope that there are not too many. Things have become very bad, but it should not be to the point where it cannot be saved. Lizu sighed. We still have a chance to win. You don't look like you are saying we can win, the Penguin muttered in his heart, and he reflected again. Should I hide in Gotham? If I don't come to Washington, at least I won't die a day earlier. Lizu suddenly said to the air, bring them back first, and wait for our reinforcement. Who will go? The Penguin stared, and Lex was also confused. But in addition to this, Lex was also wondering what reinforcement meant. And it seems that Lizu really didn't talk to the two of them, as if he was telling other people. Who else could be taken away from Doomsday Batman? That was a terrifying guy with Doomsday's abilities, Batman's fighting skills and wisdom. He could tear apart all provocateurs just as easily as he killed Superman. Don't worry, you know them all. Lizu looked out the window. At the other end of the long table, outside the transparent glass decorated with exquisitely carved windows, a red cape fluttered in the sunlight. Superman? Lex Luthor was shocked. He looked at Lizu in confusion. After the Laughing Bat launched an offensive, he had lost too much information and intelligence, otherwise he would not have cooperated with Lizu to save the world. Lex walked to the window and found that it was not just Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Batman, Cyborg, etc. All of them were there. The long team included many superheroes of the Justice League. Penguin looked at the flying figure and stood up suddenly. He knew those people. They had been in his warehouse for a long time. When they had nothing to do, they would become toys and be covered under dust-proof blankets. Because of this, Penguin knew their abilities. They were all just show-offs. Those are all your toys. Are you crazy? Green Arrow leaned against the trees on both sides of the road and took a deep breath despite the pain in his ribs. Although his ribs were bent and his internal organs were hurt by his deep breath, this action could help him accumulate a lot of strength. He pulled the bow to a full moon and aimed at Doomsday. A flash of lightning flashed by. Barry, can you let me shoot it out and come back? Because he was suddenly carried away, Green Arrow's arrow really missed the target again. Barry? Green Arrow looked at the distance. That was also Flash. The old Flash had just been helped up by Wonder Woman. He looked at the person holding him again. This battle suit was definitely a runner's. Wait. Wonder Woman. Green Arrow, who had just been sent to the rear with Mera and other injured people, was surprised to find that all the dead superhero companions had been resurrected. Superman waved his fist and posed for truth and justice. The Green Arrow's mouth twitched. This scene was inexplicably awkward and funny. Please give me strength, Wonder Woman said the same thing. Not only the two of them, but everyone else was like this. Although the postures and lines were awkward, when this group of people stood in front of him like a human wall, the Green Arrow still felt his blood boiling. Their counterattack can finally begin. What's the matter with them? Reinforcement? The Green Arrow asked the old Flash beside him. Why are there two of you? They are the work of the Toyman. The Flash nodded to himself in the distance. He carefully made superhero toys that can help us, but I don't know if these toys can resist him. The Green Arrow nodded, but then he glared. What does this mean? There is even Batman. Why not me? He looked around, and there was no trace of himself among the superheroes reciting lines. Could it be that he, the Green Arrow, is of no help to this team? Damn it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 Dreaming. Just as Green Arrow stared, annoyed that he was not there, the group of superheroes that suddenly appeared had already rushed towards Doomsday. The first to act was Superman. He punched Doomsday with his fist. Doomsday raised his left palm. The collision of fists and palms created a wave of air. Both of them shook their bodies, and it was obvious that they were not feeling well. Doomsday's Batman raised his eyebrows angrily. The words of the old Flash just now did not escape his ears. But after the real fists and palms collided, Doomsday Batman was sure that the one in front of him was definitely the real Superman. Because he had killed Superman with his own hands. Whether it was the strength, speed, or everything else, the Superman in front of him was, yes, an indestructible Superman. But, even if it was the real Superman, he could kill him a second time. A golden rope flew out of his sight and tied up Doomsday's right arm, which had just been raised. Wonder Woman tied the lasso of truth to her waist, pulled the lasso of truth with both hands, and leaned back with her feet like a tug-of-war, while shouting at the top of her voice, "Give me strength." Doomsday tried to break free from the restraints. As the one being tied up, he pulled Wonder Woman closer to him step by step, and his combat boots easily gnawed grooves on the ground. Doomsday has an unmatched advantage in strength. Get out of the way. Look at me. With the shout, Superman suddenly increased his strength and pushed Doomsday back uncontrollably. At this moment, a truck made entirely of green energy fell from the sky and hit Doomsday on the head. With his left hand free, Doomsday immediately raised his fist to meet the green energy truck. It was a car made of green light energy, far beyond the reach of ordinary trucks. As the truck hit Doomsday's fist, there was rolling thunder. The lightning column fell from the sky without dark clouds and came so suddenly. The flames rolled into a storm and were very accurately controlled around Doomsday Batman. The superheroes who worked together were much more powerful than imagined. It was like a monkey crawling all over his body. Doomsday Batman became unable to move in this siege. The attack continued, and Doomsday Batman found himself at a disadvantage. What happened to him? Green Arrow looked at the distance in confusion. The sudden appearance of the superheroes really surprised him, but what happened next made him a little confused. There was no fight. Just standing there. Yes, Doomsday Batman stood in place, facing the group of superheroes called Toys by the Old Flash. They seemed to be asleep. We should retreat. The Old Flash put on the mask again. Although time had never favored his body, the Speed Force still remained in his body and was driven by him. He recovered most of his injuries. It looks like it's that toy man again. Green Arrow plucked the bowstring and gritted his teeth, saying, "I'm not in the toy. I'm the famous Green Arrow. How can I not be more famous than that Batman? Barry, you often give me free things, don't you?" Flash pulled the corner of his mouth and didn't explain. The other party didn't make a toy. Green Arrow must have made clear considerations, and the most clear consideration might be to save materials. After all, the same materials seem to be more useful to make two Supermen. But Flash decided to keep his mouth shut. This shouldn't be said. The group quickly evacuated, leaving only the dazed fighting toys and the equally motionless Doomsday Batman. Doomsday was still struggling hard. He admitted that he was in a tough battle. Whether it was strength or speed, he was restrained. The self that he cared about the most, Batman, had never shown up. He seemed to be hiding in the shadows, and there was no trace of him. The blows of fire and thunder could not make people pretend that nothing happened. In fact, the pain was getting clearer and clearer, and Doomsday's shell was about to be broken. The sense of crisis of impending destruction reminded Batman Doom of the time when the Justice League was first established, when the Teen Titans were established, and the first banquet of superheroes. At that time, their beliefs were very firm. They fought together for justice and worked for the same bottom line. All enemies who tried to distort it would be defeated. Now, I, who had given up everything I had, seemed to be defeated as well. A punk-style off-road vehicle with barbs on it suddenly tore through the woods in the suburbs, flying with billowing smoke and ha-ha-ha laughter. The front of the car was still spitting fire. The laughing bat twisted the steering wheel, and the car suddenly spun and knocked over Batman Doom, who was standing still. As expected, the rear of the punk-style off-road vehicle with barbs on it seemed to hit a mountain, and it dented its taillights and knocked off its tires. "He's so tough." The laughing bat jumped out of the car and half crouched on the door of the car with idling tires. The black cloak spread out, and the sky seemed to be gloomy. "What kind of mental magic is it?" he asked. A slightly childish voice came, "Maybe, but I can feel that he is sleeping." The laughing bat looked up at the sky. It was a Green Lantern. He looked like a teenager. Yes, he was still Bruce Wayne. Green Lantern Bruce Wayne. After the gunshots in Crime Alley, the great will of young Bruce Wayne attracted the Green Lantern ring. He overcame his fear and killed the criminals with the power of the lantern ring he controlled. That was why he was able to appear here, instead of letting him pile up with the corpses after the laughing bat found him. Green Lantern Bruce Wayne slowly fell down and hovered half a meter above the ground, which still made him much shorter than Doomsday. He is having a nightmare. I can feel his powerlessness. Green Lantern Batman raised his ring, which had cracks on it. This was an unusual Green Lantern ring. What a terrifying ability. He makes people have nightmares, and that nightmare will also be reflected in reality. The laughing bat grinned his ugly mouth and observed Doomsday Batman. Flames, thunder, and body tremors were destroying his body all the time. This is a battle of willpower. I can wake him up. The green light came on. In the battle of willpower, Green Lantern seemed to have no reason to fail. The light came on, like a green sun that suddenly lit up. The light swallowed up the sunlight and enveloped most of the suburbs. When the green light disappeared, Doomsday opened his eyes. His cloudy eyes showed that he had not figured out the situation in front of him. This was only temporary. When he saw the laughing bat and Green Lantern Batman, he instantly guessed all the possibilities. He slowly raised his fist and punched Superman on the head. Superman also tried to raise his arm to stop it, but his arm was as fragile as a piece of paper, and his head was smashed away. Superman, who fell to the ground, really became a toy and broke into pieces. Chapter 272, Falling from the Sky. The subsequent battle was simple. Whether it was Green Lantern, Firestorm, or Wonder Woman, they were easily smashed into pieces, turned into hard plastic, and fell to the ground. Only Flash ran away quickly and triumphantly. Batman disappeared without a trace as always. This was not Gotham. There were no shadows, but Batman was able to successfully hide his figure. But in front of Green Lantern, Flash still hit the green energy wall, and Batman also revealed his figure under the illumination of the green light. Toys, what a wonderful ability. He can give toys life. The laughing bat squatted down and picked up a piece of plastic. It was Superman's left eye, made of plastic, and the parting line could be found at the position of the pupil. He can give life, but he can't give them power. Can't do it, or can't do it? The two can't do it obviously mean two different things, but they just pay attention to his meaning. He's right in front of us. Green Lantern Batman flew forward, and the one who was one step faster was Doomsday Batman. He stomped his feet on the ground, and the reaction force was like a cannon barrel, blasting him into the sky. Green Arrow was still following the survivors to evacuate. This was an overwhelming battle, and he had already used up all his strength just to escape. The broken ribs kept poking his internal organs as he was bumped, and it hurt. Soon, a huge manor castle appeared in front of him. The huge castle looked like Wayne Manor had been moved here directly. A group of people stood at the door, looking up at the magnificent building. Is it really Wayne Manor? Green Arrow stood at the door, looking at the house number sign that had not been removed in time in amazement. What a terrible power it must be to move Wayne Manor from Gotham to the suburbs of Washington. There was a rumbling sound behind him, and a black dot fell from the sky, and it was getting bigger and bigger. At the end, there was a thud, just like the one that fell from the sky not long ago, but this time no one was killed. He stood there without moving, but he was like a mountain, making people breathless. Soon someone else caught up with him. The laughing bat, the one who brought him here, was the Green Lantern Batman. Green Lantern Batman waved his hand again, and Flash and Batman were thrown to the ground by the green light, unable to move. The fate of the other toys is self-evident. How should we fight this? Green Arrow shouted. Barry, where are the reinforcement? The gate of the manor slowly opened, and 3 people stood there. On the left was the bald Lex Luthor, who was not known to many people on this planet. On the right was the Penguin, Batman's old enemy, who was much shorter than the people around him. The person standing in the middle was an Asian man that Green Arrow did not know. He was wearing a green suit that contrasted with his own color, and a hat that could definitely be called antique style on his head. Recalling what the old Flash said before, Green Arrow guessed the other party's identity. Toyman. A bastard who suddenly appeared and was inexplicable. The reason why he was added inexplicable was because Green Arrow was very angry that the other party did not count him as a combat force. Just the 3 of them, Pudding Harley Quinn happily pounced over. I remember Harley Quinn's little pudding, isn't it the clown? The Green Arrow's expression under the mask was very interesting. Perhaps he would feel very comfortable seeing that green guy become even greener. The laughing bat was not in a hurry to attack. Perhaps in his opinion, there was no suspense in this battle and he would definitely win. Although there were many people on this side, there were only 3 people on the laughing bat's side. We meet again, Toyman. The laughing bat's laughter was almost integrated into his habit. He always laughed twice every time he said 2 words. Before the battle began, Lizu only rescued a group of remnants, and even the superhero toys that might be of great use were completely destroyed. It was a bad start. You only have these people. Lizu rolled his eyes. His eyes looked very listless under the dark bags under his eyes, and his whites were full of bloodshot. He looked at Doomsday Batman, then turned his eyes to Green Lantern Batman, and finally looked at the laughing bat. What he said next not only surprised the laughing bat, but also the Green Arrow and others. Lizu smiled with his mouth pulled. His decadent smile was not much better than the laughing Batman. He said, if there are only this few people, I will definitely win. Green Arrow looked at the Harley Quinn who pounced on the Toyman, and suddenly realized that, although this person is not a clown, he is a madman. The expressions of other people are the same. What gave him this confidence that he dared to say that he would defeat Doomsday? Green Lantern Batman doesn't look simple either. Lizu looked up at the sky and asked, have you chosen your opponents? The laughing Batman didn't have any expression, but the Green Lantern Batman floating above his head changed his face, and a green energy shield with barbs was raised above his head. There was a dazzling yellow light flashing in the sky. Hammers, rapiers, knives, axes, countless weapons fell from the sky and hit the laughing Batman and the other 3 accurately. Each weapon was extraordinary, and the shield only resisted for 2 or 3 seconds before cracks appeared. A spear quickly fell from the sky, piercing the wind, easily piercing the green shield, and pierced the ground with a bang. Only then did the others realize how terrifying the rain of weapons falling from the sky was. Previously, it was the Green Lantern shield that resisted the impact. If these attacks hit the ground, each blow would be no less than Doomsday's fist. Haha, your ally? The laughing bat did not waver at all, even though the spear made of yellow energy was not far behind his head, just a little bit away from making him say goodbye to this world completely. Of course, my ally. Lizu nodded. The others also raised their heads, and through the thick smoke they saw who the reinforcement that fell from the sky were. There were 100 warriors who controlled yellow energy. The Yellow Lantern warriors were not from Earth, but this was not their first time to come to Earth. The heads of alien planets were all wearing yellow energy uniforms. Everything started a few days ago when Captain Atom blew himself up in Metropolis. Lizu picked up a naked woman. She was unconscious. Of course this was not the most important thing. What was important was her identity. Star Sapphire Carol Ferris. In the 7 Colors Lantern Corps, she was a member of the Purple Lantern Corps. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. The 7 lanterns represent different beliefs and emotions. Some children who had just finished school in Seaside City could recite a few stories about the Green Lantern. The awakened Carol Ferris told what she had seen with her own eyes. Seaside City had been destroyed by the Laughing Bat, and she had escaped before that, but she was also injured. So when Lizu picked up the Star Sapphire, he decided to expand the scope of his reinforcement and set his sights outside the Earth. It was a pity that Star Sapphire failed to find the Green Lantern Corps, but brought the Yellow Lantern. The leader. Even Lizu couldn't help but squint his eyes. Sinestro, the leader of the Yellow Lantern. He was definitely one of the best companions that Lizu could foresee, but whether the other party really cooperated was still to be discussed. This planet looks terrible, where's Hal? Sinestro looked down at Lizu, with the Yellow Lantern Corps behind him. He had the qualifications to look down on everyone. As for the short Green Lantern, it was just a joke. Green Lantern Batman had already rushed up and killed 3 Yellow Lanterns with 1 strike. Yes, 1 strike. He acted very quickly. The first attack was tantamount to provocation. Sinister Kid, get rid of this Green Lantern first. Sinestro floated in the air with his arms around his shoulders. He had no intention of taking action himself. He was just a Green Lantern with a firmer belief. Anyone who has read the history of the Green Lantern Corps must know who Sinestro is. Under the light of fear of the Yellow Lantern, the Green Lanterns can only fail. Chapter 273, Lantern War. Green Lantern Batman rushed into the sky, and the green light energy was like a bow that was stretched into a full moon, shooting him towards the hundreds of Yellow Lantern warriors in the sky. Green Lantern should be fearless, no matter who the enemy is. However, this scene is a bit exaggerated. If you look up from the ground, you will see a green arrow flying up continuously, and the yellow light above your head is dense. He is getting faster and faster, and some of the Yellow Lanterns put up shields to resist, while others transform into energy weapons to fight back. It is an arrow that moves forward without stopping. Green Lantern Batman waved the weapon in his hand, and the green light was his weapon. His will was more powerful than any illusion, so the green light just flashed and turned into a beam of light, and 3 Yellow Lanterns fell down. 3 bodies fell to the ground, raising dust. The battle started quickly, beyond everyone's expectations. Hehe, the laughter of the laughing bat attracted everyone's attention back, although no one thought that a Green Lantern Batman could defeat hundreds of Yellow Lanterns, and there was also Sinestro to suppress the scene. But their current situation is not necessarily easy. A group of injured drags, facing Doomsday Batman, still have zero chance of winning. As for the laughing bat, he is just a clown version of Batman, without any special abilities. Even if he is injured, these superheroes are still confident that they can beat him up and knock out his unhealthy teeth one by one. Sinestro, who is in the sky, still hugged his shoulders and had no intention of participating in the battle, even though his men had gone from 3 dead to 6 dead. In less than 2 minutes, 6 Yellow Lantern warriors fell down without any resistance. At the moment their bodies fell to the ground, the Yellow Lantern rings also detached from their fingers and flew into the sky. The rings will look for the next owner, a master who can bring fear to people. Compared with the Green Lantern who has firm beliefs and indomitable courage, the existence of the Yellow Lantern Corps seems to represent that he cannot become a positive character. Only when he can give others fear can he be considered to have the power of the Yellow Lantern. The stalemate of the battle will obviously not last too long, and Doomsday takes action again. Damn it, he's coming. Green Arrow shouted, while enduring the pain in his ribs. In fact, he didn't need to remind him, because the others had seen it with their own eyes. Even if they closed their eyes, they could feel it. Every time the giant stomped his feet, the ground would shake like an earthquake. Before you could clearly feel the shockwaves under your feet being transmitted to your brain, he had already pounced on you and took your head off first. Whoosh, something fell from the sky. Very quickly, it was faster than the limit of vision. Perhaps among the people present, only the Flash could see clearly who it was. The fall squeezed the air, and the red cape rubbed against the wind, and even the roar of the ground being hit became one boom! Exclamation mark. A red light fell on the path that Doomsday had to pass, and the ground raised a huge dust that filled the site. Doomsday Batman rushed into the dust. What followed was a boom, the sound of fists colliding, and the collision of power gave rise to airwaves. The invisible ripples became clearly visible against the background of the dust. So, the dust that just blocked people's vision was blown away in the next moment. They finally saw who was coming. The tattered red cape fluttered, blown straight by the strong wind. It was Superman. He was like a magic needle, with his feet inserted into the ground, and the 5 fingers of his right hand spread out to block the Doomsday Batman whose fist was bigger than his head. Superman? Green Arrow shouted out the voice of everyone. Superman is dead. This is the consensus of everyone. They all know that if Superman is not dealt with, the laughing bat will not be able to attack others first. Another red figure rushed up. It was Supergirl. She had to cooperate with Superman, and maybe she could barely resist the invincible offensive of Doomsday. You brought him back, this is what the laughing bat said to Lizu. The laughing bat looked at Superman who was fighting with Doomsday. He had the power of Superman, and he also had something that Superman did not have. But every time he fights Doomsday, the huge force that flows into the body of the zombie Superman will make the muscle tissue wrapped outside the skeleton vibrate and tremble, and there are signs of separation. The connection between the muscle and the skeleton will be broken, but the muscle cells, as the strongest biochemical weapon, will heal and grow rapidly. Each muscle will stretch out fine veins like spider webs, pulling the bones, and merge with the Superman skeleton again before the next force hits. Doomsday Batman also knows this. Every time he wants to reach out and tear the layer of meat off the skeleton, Supergirl's fist will appear just in time. The battle cannot be ended in a short time. But the Laughing Bat obviously has no allies. Although Lizu's side only has old and weak soldiers, it is not a big problem for them to kill a clown version of Batman. He should get more sun in the sky. Lizu nodded regretfully, answering the Laughing Bat's words. If the tyrant cells wrapped around Superman's skeleton could evolve and have Kryptonian genes, it would be like having a real zombie Superman, not a defective product with skin wrapped around bones that could barely imitate Superman's strength. Even cloning a large army of Supermen would not be a problem. Time was too urgent. This was a very contradictory thing. He had to stay in this world for a few years, but the Laughing Bat was eager to destroy this world when he had just been in this world for less than a month or two. Time was too urgent. This battle would undoubtedly destroy his zombie Superman, a perfect biochemical weapon. An arrow had already been shot at the Laughing Bat, followed by the voice of the Green Arrow. Why are you talking so much nonsense to him? Kill him first. Kill him first. And the remaining superheroes rushed up. Lizu did not move, and Lex Luthor did not seem to use his weapons, and did not intend to go up and fight head on. He stared at the zombie Superman, and wondered what he was thinking. The Penguin shrank his neck. Yes, he had no neck, but he made that move. Several times, he wanted to reach out and tug at the corner of Lizu's clothes. The Laughing Bat laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha. Just like his name, he spun his body and kicked away the first Beast Boy who tried to approach him, and at the same time, a bat dart flew out of his sleeve and shot down the arrow of Green Arrow. His body movements were still as smooth as Batman's, and the group of old and weak soldiers were knocked down without any suspense. The Laughing Bat was also merciless, just like he strangled the opponent's neck with his arm, and then twisted it happily. Snap. Chapter 274, Toy-like Understanding. Nothing could affect him except the roar. More and more people fell to the ground. There were 3 battlefields, but the situation was not optimistic. A black shadow passed by. A figure rushed forward. It was Batman. When the Green Lantern Batman rushed to the yellow lantern core in the sky, Batman had already gained freedom. Seeing that the others were no match for the Laughing Bat, he immediately rushed forward. Oh, Batman. The Laughing Bat was obviously very happy. The two faced each other, with only a punch between their noses. Batman retracted his right fist and elbowed out, but it hit the Laughing Bat who also elbowed. Collision. Separation. When Batman wanted to use Karate Sidekick, the opponent had already used the same method to resolve it. I know all the moves you know, but as a toy, you are still delicate. The Laughing Bat threw 2 punches fiercely. This boxing method was not in Batman's file. The Laughing Bat laughed. Ha ha ha, it seems that I can do it, but you may not. The 2 punches made Batman a little dizzy, and he quickly retreated to distance himself. He kicked sideways with his legs, rolled down and straightened his waist at the same time, and grabbed with his right hand while squatting. He used the force of his body falling backward to pull the opponent to the ground, and took the opportunity to clamp his arms with his legs. Although this was a somewhat feminine attack, the flexible use of yoga should have a good effect. Bang, the gunshot sounded, and just as Batman started the flying kick, the bullet exploded in his chest, splashing blood. The bullet hole in his chest instantly drained Batman's strength, and he fell to the ground. It was a bullet in the lung, causing difficulty breathing. Oh, sorry. The Laughing Bat held the gun, and his smile was still extremely bad. You should have some plans in your mind. He put away the gun, and did not look at Batman, whose vitality was gradually weakening, but looked at Lizu. It's my turn to play, Lizu said to the Harley Quinn beside him, and took off the hunter's hat on his head. Do you want a weapon? Harley Quinn took the hat with one hand, and held it in front of her chest, while holding the broken bat in the other hand. Well, you may not need this thing. She took her hand back embarrassedly. It can be seen that she really considered letting Lizu take the broken bat and fight with the Laughing Bat. Lizu just asked, take good care of Shirley. Zombie Superman and Supergirl worked together to fight Doomsday, but they were in a stalemate. The battle in the sky was still going on. They were thousands of meters away from the ground. People on the ground looked up and could only see a group of small glowing points of light colliding with each other. And those points of light were too far away to be seen clearly in the sun. The superheroes lying on the ground, both dead and alive, made Lizu a little disappointed. Things don't always go according to plan. If there is a slight mistake, his last life will be left here. The laughing bat seemed to see Lizu's disappointment. He said, haha, worthless cards, right? No, at least it's a little useful. Lizu shook his head and thought to himself, they provide 2% of the world's exploration degree. The world's perfection cannot be separated from them. He took a step forward with his left foot and stepped on the iron threshold of Wayne Manor. His left leg instantly turned into a stuffed toy. You look different than before. The laughing bat's smile did not fade. He was still in the mood to comment on Lizu's appearance, like a puppet like before. The left leg of the stuffed toy landed on the ground, but it turned into a building block, a Lego building block. At the same time, Lizu's right leg also took a step forward, and it kept changing from stuffed toys, plastic products, metal, plastic and other materials, and finally turned into a Lego building block. Wow, this is wonderful. The laughing bat laughed even more exaggeratedly. Everyone who saw this scene would be surprised and couldn't close their mouths. A person actually turned himself into a toy made of building blocks while walking. This transformation has not ended yet, and it spreads from his legs upwards. At the same time, his legs are also changing. The most intuitive thing is that the Lego building blocks have turned green, and a lot of them have grown out of thin air. When Lizu's head was also transformed into a toy, his body had also been completely transformed. He was a little giant over 2 meters tall, a very delicate Lego work, covered with barbs, full of power. Boom. He stomped his feet, and his body got rid of the toy and turned into alive. But he was no longer the Asian youth who looked a little decadent and smiled from time to time, but a green-skinned missile monster with terrifying bone spurs on his joints. Disgusting. That's right, this is Lizu's deeper understanding of toyization. At the beginning, he could only turn small objects into toys and then turn them back, and the transformation required a lot of energy. Even if he could easily turn a building into a toy and put it in his pocket later, it was impossible to turn the small battery in Iron Man's chest into a toy. Living people can also be turned into toys, and they can become humans again at any time. They are still themselves, but the switch on their bodies is in Lizu's hands. But he could only turn the living into toys first, and then release them. That was just an ordinary transformation. Both transformations would waste his internal energy, but in return he might only be able to carry them easily. The name of the toy man was not worthy of the name. Later, he did reversely deduce that he could directly give life to the toys, let them come alive, and directly have life, which was tantamount to stealing the power of God. He could even give the toys their original power. A toy gun can be turned into a real gun, which would not consume too much power. But a Superman doll, no matter how much power he has, cannot have the ability to destroy the world. Just filling the gap in the power he has will drain him in an instant. The price of having his internal energy and spiritual power drained is that he himself becomes a toy and can never recover, even if he has the blood of the old gods. But making toys alive and moving, and making Superman toys into real Superman, are two different things. He can make all toys he touches of life, just like he can easily make a Thanos toy alive, but it is just a fragile creature that looks like a purple potato. Only those who have been turned into toys by him and recorded in his brain can be given the original power of their body after he pays enough energy. Although Lizu does not have many toy collections, he has controlled many toys, all of which exist in his brain. Therefore, when the toy-like ability became his most proficient ability and reached the master level, new ideas were developed again. Especially that time, the sudden contact with the one-armed female SHIELD agent made Lizu think differently about his ability. Combination. The body parts of two different individuals can be replaced, such as making a person have a hateful arm. Of course, during this period, the toy-like ability must be maintained continuously, otherwise the rejection of both sides will cause the combiner to die first. After that, many combination experiments have allowed Lizu to find a new way to use it, although this is the first time he has used this ability. Combination replacement, turning himself into a Lego brick that is easier to transform, and at the same time stacking the Lego bricks into the shape of Abomination, and then constantly infusing them with energy, allowing him to directly transform into Abomination. When the earth trembled, and a monster with a ferocious appearance no less than the Destroyer roared, and pounced on the laughing bat, everyone knew how heavy his fist was. What is Abomination's line? Forget it, I'll crush you first. Chapter 275 Green Fist vs Iron Fist. The fist covered with grey-green scales hit the laughing bat, but before that, a flash of lightning flashed, and Lizu's punch hit nothing. Anything else? Lizu's voice sounded dull and hoarse. The laughing bat was not dead. The runner wearing a red tights and a bat symbol on his chest took the laughing bat away. His speed was difficult to catch. The red speed force turned into a bat, and it spun around Lizu like a death god, as if building a red wall around Lizu's body. Get out of here. His huge hands slammed together, and the airflow exploded under the sudden swing of his hands, like a wall suddenly smashing forward. The red wall was instantly blown off, and the embarrassed figure rolled away. Runner? After turning into Abomination, Lizu's state seemed to be affected by the green skin. His feet dug a big hole in the ground, and his body burst towards the runner Batman. Quick, quick, quick! Exclamation mark. The fast runner fell over and rushed over. In an instant, Lizu felt that all parts of his body were attacked, and his fists also hit an indescribable wall. The dense attack consumed the power of his fists. There was no doubt that this punch hit cotton again. The fast runner Batman stopped in the distance. Looking at his slightly loose shoulders and shaking chest, he must have spent a lot of effort just now. A beast with great strength and slow speed, facing an agile fast runner, this is an incomparable disadvantage. For Lizu, the real disadvantage is that he can't maintain this state for a long time. Becoming an Abomination is not like becoming a puppet. The former requires him to provide physical energy all the time to maintain the explosion of the power of the Abomination, while the latter, he will only spend a little energy, almost nothing. Every time he uses an overload of ability, his body will become a toy, and it can't even be reversed. Get out of the way. The roar fell from the sky, and the figure seemed to be more powerful than the sound. The fast runner Batman left quickly with the laughing bat. Lizu had no energy to chase him. The hot air from the sky was like the heat after a TNT explosion. The wind blew up the dust and the air was much heavier. The newcomer was not friendly. The fist carrying the divine fire fell from the sky. The Abomination incarnated by Lizu raised his fist, and the flesh fist collided with the metal. There was a dull thud. The green muscles trembled in the collision, and the bones screamed. This punch consumed a lot of energy, so it needed to be a quick battle. He glanced at the man who fell from the sky. He was wearing an ancient Greek helmet and heavy armor. The bad mark on his chest showed his identity. Batman, Batman. Lizu said in a dull voice, it seems that the bat nest has been poked. The green arm pulled back suddenly, and kicked out at the same time. The terrifying power hidden in the green muscles instantly kicked the newcomer away. The power of the Abomination was not much weaker than that of the other party. The Greek god of war version of Batman adjusted his body shape in the air, and after retreating 50 meters, he half knelt and hit the ground. He hit the ground with his right fist, easily chewing up the soil, in this way slowing down the force of retreat. He just slowed down his drive to retreat, and a shadow had already enveloped him. The god of war version of Batman raised his head, only to see the green giant with his fists interlaced, and smashing down like a tomahawk. Faced with such an attack, he could only roll on the ground to dodge, and after his fists fell on the ground like hammers, the hard ground instantly sank, and the soil layer sank more than 1 meter. And like a wave, with the fist hitting the ground as the center, it quickly spread outward, and the ground cracked layer by layer, like a blooming lotus, with an area of 20 meters. A huge muffled sound, dust several meters high, and the ground was shattered. It was an unmatched force, but it was a pity that it was smashed into nothing. Puff, listening to the sound, the air seemed to have been drilled. Lizu made a hole in the dust, and flew out backwards. The bone spur on his back landed first, and he easily reclaimed the ground. His green body kept sinking under the huge force, sinking rapidly like an excavator. The soil behind him piled up more and more, and finally he sank into a big pit, with a big mound behind him. The armored figure jumped high again and smashed down. The iron boots that fell from the sky hit Lizu's gray-green chest. The other party looked down at him. The eyes under the iron helmet stared at Lizu. "Your body is very special. I like your helmet very much." The muffled voice did not get rid of Lizu's impropriety. "This is not going to end well." Lizu glanced at the center of his left hand and said, his little finger trembled. Without enough infusion, the little finger had turned back into a plastic building block. The power of hatred may not be weaker than the other party, but Lizu's transformation of hatred is still too far behind. Batman in the armor didn't seem to want to say more. He raised his iron fist and smashed it down mercilessly. The fist wrapped in the divine fire had an irresistible power, strength and divine power, enough to burn everything in the world. Lizu's body suddenly shrank, and most of his body turned back to human form, which gave him enough energy to maintain the transformation of his left hand, and he wouldn't be smashed to pieces because he was stuck in the building block state. But the trampling power of the iron boots could kill him in an instant. In a second, his internal organs were broken, and his mouth was full of blood. His chest was sunken and could not resist. At the same time, the remaining power gathered in Lizu's right fist, and the barbs that hated the growth of the arm joints rushed out more violently. The big hand grabbed the ankle of the God of War Batman and cut off the direction of his iron fist. The ground shook with a rumble, and the fist deviated and hit the side of Lizu's face. The divine fire burned most of his right body, and half of his face was burning, and he seemed to be developing into a two-faced man. The air was torn apart again, and the figure wearing a helmet was like a stone skipping on the lake, creating ripples on the ground. After the divine fire spread, Lizu's figure was no longer there, but a little girl was standing there. Shirley Birkin. Half of her face was corroded by the flames, and the flames seemed to have no intention of stopping until it was burned to ashes. Soon, the flesh covering her face was burned through, revealing the white bones. Crackling, crackling, the flesh stuck to the flames was quickly cut off. She endured the pain. No, she should be smiling. The flesh on the white bones of her cheeks was growing rapidly, weaving into a spider web. In the blink of an eye, the injury was mostly healed, and the repair was still accelerating. Finally, her cheeks became smooth. The sunken chest also returned to normal. Darn. Shirley Birkin sat on the ground, not caring that she was wearing a school uniform skirt and wearing. An even more bizarre scene followed. Shirley's appearance gradually faded and changed back to Lizu, who collapsed on the ground powerlessly. The figure that was beaten and sent flying came crashing down again, looking down at Lizu, just like he looked down at Lizu more than 10 minutes ago. "I surrender. I won't be killed if I surrender, right?" Lizu raised his hands. However, the iron fist slowly grabbed Lizu. Lizu sighed, as if he was regretting why the other party abandoned the good virtue of surrendering and not being killed. His eyes suddenly changed, becoming very confident. "Well, forget it. You are arrested." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.